LoveLore Library. Chapter 75. Your Majesty, you said last time that I'll be the winner this time. Didn't your Majesty take away your winnings? Thinking of that kiss and everything that happened afterward, Shen Yu's face blushed. The skin on the inner side of his wrist was rubbed by the calloused fingertips, and the numbness spread along the skin and snaked up. Shang Junlin stared at Shen Yu, and his eyes became deeper and deeper. I did say that, but this time I want to. Will you give it to me? Shen Yu felt like his wrist was on fire, burning from the outside to the inside. He tried to withdraw his hand, but was stopped by the man. Shang Junlin didn't use much strength to hold his arm, but it was just enough for him to break free. Shen Yu tried a few times, but he couldn't withdraw his hand. The man held his hand, raised it up, and lowered his head slightly. A soft kiss fell on the back of Shen Yu's hand. Shen Yu's fingers curled up slightly as if they were scalded. Shang Junlin didn't let go of his hand. He kissed the back of his hand intimately and fell on his fingers. His thin lips were slightly open. Shen Yu only felt a wet and warm sensation on his fingers. He wanted to withdraw his fingers, but the man forcefully restrained his movements. His fingertips were densely bitten. The man's gaze fell on his body. It didn't seem like he was biting his fingers, but rather tasting something delicious. Your Majesty, let go of me. It's dirty. Shen Yu turned his head to avoid the man's gaze. His blood-red earlobe was exposed in front of the man. Shang Junlin's Adam's apple bobbed, and the fire in his eyes gradually burned. I want to kiss you. A vague voice sounded. Shen Yu's eyelashes trembled, and he lowered his head and didn't speak. Shang Junlin chuckled. The tip of his tongue circled around his finger, leaving a wet trace. Shen Yu looked to the other side. He didn't know when his hand was released. The man walked behind him and leaned over to his ear. Let me kiss you, okay? Although it was a question, Shang Junlin did not intend to listen to Shen Yu's reply. He moved closer to Shen Yu's ear and opened his mouth slightly. The ripe red fruit was placed into his mouth, and he gently rubbed it with his teeth. The fruit was too tender, and the owner was afraid that it would be damaged, so he didn't dare to use too much strength. Shen Yu trembled all over when his earlobe was touched like this. All of his senses were covered with a layer of fog. He suddenly felt that everything was unreal. Only the places that were touched could feel everything clearly. Unknowingly, Shen Yu was sitting in the man's arms. Her increasingly red earlobes were released and turned to the side of her neck. Following her delicate jawline, it finally fell to her lips. Attacking cities and seizing territories. Large peach blossoms bloomed before his eyes, white with a hint of pink, slowly filling his line of sight. His slender and fair fingers clutched his black robe tightly, leaving creases behind. The sun was setting in the west, and the orange light surrounded the two of them, giving them a hazy golden edge. Occasionally, there were a few soft whimpers, but they were blown away by the wind before they could reach their ears. Eunuch Meng led the palace servants to stand in the distance. He tactfully lowered his head, not daring to look. As expected by Shang Junlin, the next morning, there was an uproar because of Fang Jiayi's matter. Even the fact that Shang Junlin brought Shen Yu to the palace examination was selectively ignored. In the eyes of the aristocratic officials, breaking the ancestral rule to recruit women as officials was much more serious than other matters. Your Majesty, you can't do this. There has been no precedent since ancient times. Miss Fang hid her identity to participate in the imperial examination. This is the crime of deceiving the emperor. Your Majesty, you can't set a precedent like this. If all the women in the world follow suit, wouldn't it be a mess? Someone who had seen Fang Jiayi's answer sheet yesterday retorted, not all women can be so talented. So what? Since ancient times, which dynasty has a woman entered the imperial court as an official? Women should be content with their lot, obediently stay in the backyard to serve their parents-in-law, and have children. Lord Zhao, you are wrong. There are many capable women. How can you say such prejudiced words? Lord Zhao's neck stiffened. Am I wrong? If they were all content with their lot, how could today's incident happen? The argument in the front hall was endless, and Shang Junlin didn't say anything. Shen Yu shook the cup in his hand and said to Mu Shi, who was next to him. You see, these people have nothing to say. They can only use the crime of deceiving the emperor as an excuse. They can't wait for your majesty to immediately execute this deviant woman. Shen Yu deliberately got up early today and waited for Shang Junlin in the back hall. He was also very curious to see what would happen in the morning court. Mu Shi heard the voices from the front hall and felt indignant. Why do they think that women are born to stay in the backyard and have children for men? That's why your majesty is right. Some of the ministers in the imperial court should be replaced. They were short-sighted and only knew how to form cliques and pursue personal interests. Keeping them would only be a waste of their salary. The argument in the front hall continued. Some of the officials, led by the Prime Minister, agreed with Fang Jiayi's results, although they felt that the matter of letting women enter the imperial court as officials was debatable. The remaining members of the Qian family also stood on the Prime Minister's side. After the incident with Prince Li, Shang Junlin took the opportunity to promote many of his own people. The imperial court had changed a lot. A group of veteran officials, led by the aristocratic families, refused to budge. Not only did none of the aristocratic family's descendants enter the top 3, but a woman even took a spot. How could they accept this? Another reason was that their people happened to be in 4th place this time. If Fang Jiayi was removed, their people would be able to take a spot in the top 3, and they would not lose too much face. Shang Junlin clearly knew what the aristocratic families were thinking. Seeing that they were about to quarrel with Yu Lai, he interrupted, "Look at all of you, all red in the face. You don't look like important officials at all." The main hall quieted down. Meng Chang, show them the second-place answers. You all said that women should not be officials. Why don't you take a look at the woman's essay before you speak? Eunuch Meng led the young eunuchs to distribute the prepared essays one by one. After reading, some of the officials who had objected to Fang Jiayi's essay because of her identity as a woman lowered their heads in shame. Those who could keep their positions under Shang Junlin's rule were all knowledgeable. They could tell that the essay was well written. Some of the officials who did not want to admit that women were better than men changed their expressions, especially Lord Zhao, who wanted to belittle Fang Jiayi. His face turned green and then white. No matter how much prejudice he had against women, he had to admit that the article in his hand was extremely well written. If he hadn't known beforehand that it was written by a woman, he wouldn't have dared to believe that such an article was written by a woman. Does anyone have anything to say now? Shang Junlin looked at the people below calmly. The officials lowered their heads and did not say anything. The Prime Minister was the first to stand out. I think that this woman is very talented and should be hired. Immediately after, many people voiced their agreement. Lord Fang stood in the crowd, feeling both proud and distressed. He was proud that his daughter was so outstanding, but distressed because his daughter had to face everything on this path. There were already so many objections before she even started. When his daughter really entered the imperial court, how much pressure and strange looks would she receive? Even though they felt that Fang Jiayi's essay was excellent, some officials were still unwilling to accept a woman as an official. Lord Zhao was one of them. He secretly exchanged glances with a few people and stood out. Your Majesty, I agree that this essay is excellent, but there is no precedent of a woman entering the imperial court as an official. I hope that your Majesty will consider it carefully. I hope that your majesty will follow the precedent and consider this matter carefully. Not long after, a row of officials stood out. Oh. Then what do you think I should do? Shang Junlin lowered his eyes, his voice unreadable. No one will make a fuss for the time being. When they are officially appointed, they will probably make a fuss again. Shang Junlin touched Shen Yu's hair on the back. As for the official position given to Fang Jie, they will probably make a fuss. Your Majesty won't be afraid of them. Shen Yu blinked her eyes. Your Majesty was really amazing just now. Shang Junlin seemed to have thought of something. He paused and said, "You, tell me, how am I amazing?" Chapter 76. Which part of your Majesty is not powerful? Shen Yu rolled his eyes. Your Majesty is naturally powerful in every aspect. Is that so? Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's waist with one hand and held his hand with the other. He played with it in his palm. "You, do you want to try?" "Try what?" Shen Yu suddenly closed his mouth and reacted. Your Majesty, do you feel that you are different from before? How am I different? Shang Junlin thought about it seriously after hearing Shen Yu's words, but he didn't find anything wrong. Your Majesty didn't like to say this kind of thing before. Shen Yu narrowed his eyes. I didn't know how to say this before. Shang Junlin tightened his arms around Shen Yu's waist and leaned over to rub his cheek against Shen Yu. Does you like it? A layer of light pink appeared on Shen Yu's face. The man's body temperature was just like him, giving Shen Yu a fiery feeling. When their faces touched intimately, she could clearly feel the heat of another person. Shen Yu pursed her lips. Do your Majesty's officials know that you have such a side to you? Why would I want them to know? It's enough for you to know. Shang Junlin tilted his head slightly and left a kiss on Shen Yu's face. Shen Yu curled his fingers and didn't avoid it. He let the kiss move downwards. After hugging Shen Yu for a while, Shang Junlin's anger from the morning court session was extinguished. He sat down with Shen Yu in his arms. You has been waiting for me for so long. Are you hungry? Shen Yu didn't feel it until Shang Junlin mentioned it. He nodded and said, a little. Meng Chang, serve the meal. Eunuch Meng went out. Mu Shi poured tea for the two masters and retreated to the side. Shen Yu held the teacup and gently rubbed the sides of the teacup. How does your Majesty plan to deal with Mr. Zhao? Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's hand that was holding the teacup and took a sip. Does he really think that I won't dare to touch him just because he has an aristocratic family behind him? Your Majesty, that's my cup. You're not even willing to give me a sip of Yu's tea. Or is it that Yu dislikes me? Shang Junlin did not let go of the cup. Instead, he drank all the water in the cup. If your Majesty wants to drink, of course you can. It's just a cup of water. Yu, don't be angry. Jin drank your cup, so Jin will compensate you with Jin's cup. How about it? Shang Junlin took the empty cup from Shen Yu's hand, picked up another full cup and fed it to Shen Yu. Yu feed Jin once, Jin will feed Yu once. It seemed that he would not stop until Shen Yu drank. Shen Yu had no choice but to take a sip. He could see that Shang Junlin was doing it on purpose. Fortunately, Shang Junlin knew that he should not tease Shen Yu too much. After feeding him once, he returned to normal. The aristocratic families are getting more ambitious. Lord Zhao is just a stepping stone for them. If they can force His Majesty to take a step back this time, they will be able to push their luck the next time and gain more benefits for the aristocratic families. If they can't, it's fine to give up an imperial censor. It won't hurt their foundation. Shen Yu learned about Mr. Zhao's identity in the back hall. As an imperial censor, it was his duty to persuade the emperor. However, this did not mean that he could influence the emperor's thoughts because of his own selfish desires. You is right. The aristocratic families have been hovering in the imperial court for a long time. It is very difficult to shake their foundation. Shang Junlin lowered his eyes and hid the murderous intent in his eyes. From his ascension to the throne until now, the aristocratic families had made many obstacles for him. However, because the previous emperor was muddle-headed, most of the power in the imperial court fell into the hands of the aristocratic families. Although there was an imperial examination, the aristocratic families had more resources. Most of the officials selected from the imperial examination were also related to the aristocratic families. Shang Junlin spent several years to cultivate a group of officials who were not related to the aristocratic families. Shen Yu covered Shang Junlin's hand. Your Majesty, you don't have to endure for much longer. Aren't the results of the imperial examination slapping the aristocratic families in the face? None of the top 3 in the imperial examination came from an aristocratic family. Didn't they boast that they were rich and superior? How could they not be compared to Jiang Huiqing, who was born in a humble family, and Fang Jie, who was a woman? You is right. No matter how deep their roots are in Dahuan, I will cut off those roots that suck the blood of Dahuan. Shang Junlin turned his hand and wrapped Shen Yu's hand in his palm. Their fingers intertwined and intertwined. As long as these people did not act too excessively, he used to turn a blind eye to them. However, now that he had a Yu, in order to give a Yu better protection, he would not allow any problems to happen to Dahuan. Not long after, eunuch Meng brought the palace servants to put down the dishes sent by the imperial kitchen. Shen Yu took a look and saw that they were all his favorite dishes. Your Majesty, let's eat first. Okay. The two of them sat down and the palace servants retreated to the side. Shen Yu was not used to being served meals. Shang Junlin had been eating with him for a long time, so he gradually lost the habit of letting others serve him food. One was an emperor, and the other was a nobleman. These two people, who had noble statuses, ate like ordinary people. Eunuch Meng was an old man who had followed Shang Junlin for a long time. He saw with his own eyes that Shang Junlin had become more and more lively after Shen Yu entered the palace. He could not help but sigh in his heart. He had also imagined what it would be like if the emperor had someone in his imperial harem. No matter what, it would not be better than now. After the results of the court examination were out, the imperial court would send people to announce the results. At this time of the year, the people in the capital paid the most attention to the top 3. This year's results caused a lot of heated discussion. There was no other reason other than the fact that there was a woman on the list this time. Moreover, she came in second place. People's discussions about this matter could be heard everywhere in the restaurants and tea houses. A woman as an official. Isn't this a fantasy? How can a woman be an official? Compared to showing her face outside, it is better for her to stay at home and take care of her husband and children. What do you know? If she has this ability, why can't she serve the imperial court like a man? But did you notice that the noblemen who are more arrogant than the sky did not get any of the top 3? Isn't that right? Only the one who bragged about his genius persona got 4th place. If you ask me, the noblemen are too arrogant. They think that they can sit back and relax with a large number of secret manuals. They do not know that they will be left far behind by others if they work behind closed doors. A young man in white sitting not far away heard these words and his expression became very ugly. The people who were dressed like noblemen beside him looked at each other secretly and did not dare to speak. They had only pulled their good friend out to relax after seeing that his results were not ideal. They did not expect to hear such words. Brother E, it is true that I didn't do well in the exam. You don't have to say more. The young man in white took a sip of wine with an ugly expression. Have you investigated the identity of those people? It was fine that he was defeated by He Qingyu. Anyway, they were both noblemen. What about Jiang Huiqing and Fang Jie? A person who came out of nowhere dared to climb over his head. Yes, Fang Jie is the only daughter of Lord Fang. Jiang Huiqing is just an abandoned orphan with no background. Brother Jianming, do you need us to do something? The young man in white, Yi Jianming, shook his head and his eyes were gloomy. Don't act rashly. Don't think that your official career will be smooth after being in the top 3. The real difficulty is still to come. Do you really think it is so easy to be an official? It was easy to control a person without any power behind him. Brother Jianming, don't worry. Of these 2 people, one entered the official career as a woman, and the other was inextricably linked to the cheating case some time ago. It is still uncertain whether they can successfully enter the imperial court. Yi Jianming grabbed the hand of the person who spoke. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by inextricably linked to the cheating case? Oh, about that, Brother Jianming, you were focused on preparing for the exam and may have missed the news. It is said that Jiang Huiqing was also approached by those people before the exam. But who knows if he really did anything except himself? Yes. Yi Jianming smiled maliciously. How can a person without any support get such a good result if there is nothing fishy about it? Achoo! Jiang Huiqing, who was talking, suddenly sneezed. He touched his forehead. Did I catch a cold because the temperature dropped recently? It is also possible that someone is talking about you. He Qingyu slowly picked up a piece of food with his chopsticks and put it into his mouth. Brother Qingyu, don't make fun of me. If I am really being talked about, Brother Qingyu should be the same as me. Jiang Huiqing looked distressed at the mention of this matter. Because there was a top scholar and a third-place scholar, the Yingxing Tower's doorstep was almost broken by people. Just dealing with the people who came to congratulate him was already very tiring, not to mention the wave after wave of matchmakers who came to propose marriage. It was a tradition in Dehuan to find a son-in-law. He Qingyu and Jiang Huiqing were both dignified and had a clean family background. One was the top scholar, the other the third-place scholar, and neither of them was married. Countless families in the capital wanted to marry the 2 of them. Compared to He Qingyu, Jiang Huiqing's family background was a bit weaker. However, how many people who had thought of marriage would care about this? If one wanted a good family background, there were plenty of young masters from aristocratic families in the capital. Because of this, Jiang Huiqing's popularity had even surpassed He Qingyu's. At most, there were more than 20 matchmakers who came to him in one morning. Jiang Huiqing was so scared that he immediately closed the door and refused to see anyone. Seeing that he was really troubled, He Qingyu proposed to move out. Although the He family's headquarters were not in the capital, it was not difficult to get 1 or 2 houses. Jiang Huiqing thought about it and agreed. He decided to temporarily move out with He Qingyu. For some reason, he wrote a letter to Xinyu and told him what happened during this time. Xinyu finished reading Jiang Huiqing's letter and imagined the scene at that time. He couldn't help but laugh. He was scared by the enthusiasm of the people in the capital. I didn't expect that he would continue to write to you. Shang Junlin also finished reading the letter. There was a smile in his voice. I didn't expect it either. I thought that he would be scared by our true identity and not write to me for a while. Xinyu also didn't expect to receive the letter so quickly. The letter mentioned their new address. Isn't His Majesty going out of the palace in 2 days? Why don't we go and take a look? Shang Junlin wanted to see the results of the Ministry of Works. The prescription was proposed by Xinyu, so he naturally wanted to bring him along. Shang Junlin thought about it and agreed. He definitely didn't expect that we would go there. Xinyu winked slyly. Jiang Huiqing, who had finally moved to a new house without being disturbed, breathed a sigh of relief. He relaxed and rested for 2 days. At this moment, he didn't know that he would have a big surprise soon. Chapter 77. The Ministry of Works had been very busy recently. With the money and the cement recipe, they had finally caught the attention of the emperor. They had to work hard to produce results. Since the emperor had pointed out that the road needed to be repaired, the focus would naturally be on that road. After discussing with his subordinates, the Minister of Works decided to enclose that road and not announce it until there were results. This was a decision made after careful consideration. It was too easy to crack the cement recipe, and they still didn't know where His Majesty would eventually use it. To be safe, they would not let this thing leak out before they received His Majesty's explicit order. As the main sponsor, Yanjing only knew that the road was being repaired. He didn't know how the encircled road was being repaired. Since his goal had been achieved, he didn't care much about it. After a period of hurried work, that road was finally repaired. The Minister of Works stood in front of the flat road and sighed. It's indeed much better than the previous one. The person in charge of repairing the road was also from the Ministry of Works. Seeing this, he walked over and said, "Sir, this kind of road can't absorb rainwater like the previous ones. If we want to build it on a large scale, there are still many problems to consider. I will submit a memorial to the Emperor. You have made a great contribution this time. I won't forget it." "Thank you, sir." Fu Axian couldn't hide the joy in his eyes. He was originally an unremarkable minor official in the Ministry of Works. If he hadn't done some research on road construction and received the favor of the Minister of Works, he wouldn't have had the chance to make a name for himself. The Minister of Works patted his shoulder and said, "Work hard. The Emperor values the cement very much. As for the problem you mentioned just now, you have to think of a solution when you go back. In 2 days, the Emperor will personally come to see the results. Whether or not you can seize this opportunity depends on you." Fu Axian excitedly kowtowed to the Minister of Works and said, "Thank you, sir, for your support." He understood that this was an opportunity given to him by the Minister of Works. Otherwise, he could have just brushed over what he had done. The higher-ups would only care about the final results and wouldn't pay attention to him. Time passed in a flash. Soon, it was the day to leave the palace. This time, because they had to go to see the road paved by the Ministry of Works, Xin Yu and Shang Junlin did not disguise themselves. They just changed into casual clothes and sat in the carriage to leave the palace. Speaking of which, we have taken this path many times. Xin Yu lifted a corner of the carriage curtain and looked out. Who would have thought that the Emperor and I have left the palace the most often was to go to the secret prison? Take you to other places in the future. Shang Junlin turned his head and asked in a low voice. Xin Yu nodded. The two of them got on the carriage. The driver was changed to the person brought by Shang Junlin. The carriage moved forward without the bumps from before. The carriage drove 1 round and returned to the original road. Shang Junlin did not say anything, but the expression on his face showed that he was very satisfied with this road. "Your Majesty, I have another thing to report." The Minister of Works called the man who was waiting at the side. "This is the person who has the most credit for paving the road. His name is Fu Axian." Fu Axian never expected that the Minister of Works would directly introduce him in front of the Emperor. He trembled and saluted, "Your humble servant greets your Majesty and your Highness." "Fu Axian, right? You have done well this time. Reward." The final result was better than expected. Shang Junlin was very happy. "Fu Axian, your humble servant thanks your Majesty for your grace. Shang Junlin, in the future, you will be responsible for the roads in other places. If you lack anything, just tell the Minister of Works." "Fu Axian, thank you, your Majesty." Fu Axian did not expect to be directly entrusted with such an important task. He was excited, but there was a faint uneasiness in his heart. He was just an ordinary person. Could he really fulfill the expectations of the emperor? Your Majesty, I have another thing to say. Fu Axian thought of the important matter and quickly said, it is about the problem of water accumulation. This new road cannot absorb the rainwater that falls to the ground. If we want to pave a large area of this road in the city, we need to replan the problem of water accumulation in the capital. Shen Yu did not expect that someone had already realized this point. He asked with interest, since you have brought it up, do you have any good ideas to solve this problem? In reply to Your Highness, I do have some ideas. However, whether they can be implemented or not, I have to test them before I know, Fu Axian replied. If this matter is given to you, do you have the confidence to do it well? Shen Yu liked Fu Axian's serious attitude. I do not dare to guarantee, but I will do my best to do it, Fu Axian replied firmly. Very good. I have some small suggestions here. When the time comes, I can give you a reference. As for how to do it, you can discuss it with the people of the Ministry of Works. There is also the matter of the horseshoes, Shang Junlin added. You should have noticed that this kind of road causes more wear and tear on the horseshoes. The people of the Ministry of Works had noticed it. However, because the horses did not run back and forth many times, they did not take it seriously. Only when the emperor brought it up did they become serious. It is my negligence. I will have people study it. The Minister of Works bowed his head. The use of cement is far more than this. You can expand your imagination and see if there are other places where it can be used. Yes. After explaining the matters here, Shang Junlin left with Shen Yu. Her Majesty is not as scary as we thought, someone in the crowd said in a low voice. Her Majesty is not a scourge. Of course, she is not scary. The Minister of Works glanced at the person who spoke and secretly said, You have not seen Her Majesty when Guijun is not here. She is like a different person today. Guijun is also different from the rumors. He is handsome and elegant. Obviously, he is a good match for Her Majesty. Moreover, Guijun knows a lot. He has considered what we did not consider. Unlike the rumors, be careful with your words, the Minister of Works frowned and interrupted the discussion, do not talk about this matter. Go back to work. Although the discussion was interrupted, the image of Shen Yu and Shang Junlin had changed in the eyes of the people. In the past, he had not met them and could only know them from the mouths of others. Now that he met them, he knew that there was a big difference between the rumors and the truth. Shen Yu sat in the carriage and recalled the events of his previous life. In his previous life, Shen Qingran also took out cement. However, this thing was firmly in the hands of the King of Yu. It brought him huge profits, but it was not really used to benefit the people. Shen Qingran knew a lot of things. In the palace, there was also Shen Yu. These two people came from the same place. Perhaps he could ask more things that would be beneficial to the development of Dahuan. What is you thinking about? Seeing that Shen Yu had not spoken since he got on the carriage, Shang Junlin pinched the soft flesh on his face. Shen Yu was already used to being pinched by him from time to time. His thoughts returned and he said, I am thinking about Shen Qingran. That brother of yours. What is there to think about? Shang Junlin did not have a good impression of Shen Qingran. Shen Yu was silent for a moment and said, Actually, the reason I know about cement is also related to Shen Qingran. Does your Majesty know what he said in the letter he wrote to the King of Yu? Although he did not know why Shen Yu suddenly asked this question, Shang Junlin still replied, Why would I read his letter? That letter was kept by the King of Yu. If Yu wants to know, I can send the hidden dragon guards to investigate. Your Majesty, after we return to the palace, I want to see Shen Yu. If you want to see her, just ask her to come to Yuzhang Palace to see you. What is wrong with you today? You have not thought of her since just now. I thought of something. Shen Yu shook his head and threw his chaotic thoughts to the back of his mind. Your Majesty, are we arriving soon? If Shen Yu did not want to say, Shang Junlin would not force him. Yes, we will arrive soon. Jiang Huiqing was moving his books to the courtyard to bask in the sun when he saw a carriage coming from afar. He shouted into the house, Brother Qingyu, do you have a friend coming today? No, Qingyu's voice came from the house. What's wrong? There is a carriage coming this way. Jiang Huiqing scratched his face. They are not here to look for us, right? As soon as he finished speaking, the carriage began to slow down and finally stopped at the entrance of the courtyard. Who is it? No one said they were coming today. Jiang Huiqing was full of questions. Brother Qingyu, come and see if you know them. Seeing two familiar figures getting off the carriage and walking towards them, Jiang Huiqing opened his eyes wide and the rest of his words were stuck in his throat. Why did His Majesty and Gui Jun come here without saying anything? Chapter 78. Jiang Huiqing would never have thought that their first meeting after knowing their identities would take place under such circumstances. He thought that their interactions in the past would come to an abrupt end after knowing their true identities. In the future, when they met, Shang Junlin would be the high and mighty emperor, while Shen Yu would be the noble emperor in the harem. He would be a conscientious subject, just like every other official in Dahuan. Who would have thought that after he made such preparations, the two would suddenly appear in front of the small courtyard where he and Qingyu lived to avoid the matchmaker? For a moment, Jiang Huiqing didn't know what expression to make. The shock and fright in his heart had reached an extreme point. He stared blankly at the two people walking in, his mind blank. Qingyu heard the sound of people talking outside stopping halfway. He was worried that something had happened, so he quickly put down what he was doing and walked out. At a glance, he saw Shang Junlin and Shen Yu walking towards him. Qingyu's footsteps paused. He knew why Jiang Huiqing suddenly lost his voice. He looked towards Jiang Huiqing's direction. Sure enough, he was standing there in a daze, looking straight at the two people who were approaching him. He didn't react at all. Shen Yu also saw Jiang Huiqing's reaction. He was happy in his heart. In his previous life, this subordinate of his was young but mature. He had layers of secrets in his heart. Although he acted calmly, he always lacked vitality. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to do something in his heart, Shen Yu felt that he could leave this world at any time. In this life, Jiang Huiqing was different. He had like-minded friends. Shen Yu didn't know if Jiang Huiqing had met Qingyu in his previous life. In this life, they knew each other and met each other. Qingyu had always been protecting him, whether intentionally or unintentionally. In addition, the imperial examinations had been smoothly completed and he had obtained a good ranking. Now, Jiang Huiqing could be said to be full of vitality, in high spirits, and also had some of the exuberance that a young man should have. Amused by Jiang Huiqing's expression, Shen Yu laughed and said, "What's wrong? Are you so surprised to see us visit you? Can't you even speak properly? How is this a surprise?" It was more like a shock. Because of Shen Yu's words, Jiang Huiqing came back to his senses. At this moment, Qingyu walked over and said, "You two have come from afar. I apologize for not going out to meet you. It's our fault for not taking care of you. It was on a whim. We heard that you've moved to a new place, so we came to congratulate you." Eunuch Meng, who was also dressed in casual clothes, came forward with a congratulatory gift. "It's just a small token of appreciation. Brother He and Huiqing, please accept it," Shen Yu said. Seeing that their master finally had a friend come to visit, and that he had come for the Fu's Jiangnan dishes, they immediately ordered the kitchen to prepare well so that the guest would be satisfied. Shen Yu and Shang Junlin were not in a hurry to return to the palace. Seeing that Shen Yu was really curious about the dishes in He Qingyu's fu, Shang Junlin took the initiative to stay for dinner. He secretly planned to send a few imperial chefs who knew how to cook different dishes to Yuzhang Palace after returning to the palace. The small banquet was very enjoyable. Under Shen Yu's intention, the two sides quickly returned to the previous atmosphere. The chefs in He Qingyu's fu were indeed as Jiang Huiqing said. They were good at cooking, especially the various kinds of desserts. They were small and exquisite, sweet but not greasy, and had excellent taste. Shen Yu liked them very much. Almost half of the desserts on the table went into Shen Yu's stomach. If it wasn't for Shang Junlin watching, he could eat even more. As expected, the result of indulging was that Shen Yu ate until he was full. After returning to Yuzhang Palace, Shen Yu was still not feeling well. Shang Junlin supported him to take a walk in the courtyard. As they walked, he said, "I shouldn't have been soft-hearted and let you eat so much." Several times along the way, Shang Junlin was defeated by Shen Yu's slightly pleading eyes. When he saw Shen Yu eating happily and contentedly, he was soft-hearted. The result of indulging was that Shen Yu felt so uncomfortable that he couldn't fall asleep in the middle of the night. The moon was in the middle of the sky, and moonlight shone on the earth. Everything in sight was covered with a layer of cold silver. In the quiet night, there were occasional sounds of insects. After entering the palace, Shen Yu's life was extremely regular. He rarely saw the scenery of Yuzhang Palace so late at night. He looked at the full moon hanging high in the night sky and sighed, "If it weren't for my perseverance, I wouldn't be able to see such a beautiful scenery with your majesty. Your majesty, look at how round the moon is tonight." It was like a jade plate hanging in the darkness, emitting a faint silver glow, illuminating the entire night. A Yu is always right. Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's hand and slowly walked on the path. A gentle breeze blew over, bringing with it waves of coolness. The two of them would occasionally whisper a few words, enjoying a rare moment of tranquility. The next day, Shang Junlin summoned Imperial Physician Gu to take Shen Yu's pulse. After a period of recuperation, Shen Yu's body had greatly improved. Imperial Physician Gu took Shen Yu's pulse once every 2 days, but gradually reduced it to once every 7 days. Those bitter medicines were also eliminated. After Imperial Physician Gu took Shen Yu's pulse, he took back his hand and said, "Your Majesty has some indigestion. This subject will prescribe a prescription. After 2 doses of medicine, there won't be any major problems." Shen Yu never thought that one day he would take medicine for this reason. He lowered his hands and pulled down his sleeves, asking, "The medicine this time won't be the same as last time, right?" Shen Yu was really afraid of the medicine prescribed by Imperial Physician Gu last time. He didn't want to taste that indescribable taste again. Imperial Physician Gu's eyes faintly contained a smile, saying, "Your Majesty, rest assured. It won't be that bad." After taking Shen Yu's pulse, Imperial Physician Gu didn't stay any longer. After giving some instructions, he got up and left. Mu Shi took the medicine to decoct. She was always in charge of the medicine that Shen Yu needed to take. She didn't ask anyone else to do it. Shen Yu wrote down some information about the use of cement based on his memories from his previous life. He planned to organize it and let Shang Junlin bring it to the Ministry of Works. "What is you writing?" After the morning court, Shang Junlin directly went to Yuzhang Palace. Now, other than the imperial study and the main hall where morning court was held, Shang Junlin spent most of his time in Yuzhang Palace. In the beginning, the people in the palace were surprised by how much Shen Yu was favored. Now, they felt that it wasn't strange for His Majesty to do anything for His Majesty. "I plan to organize these for the Ministry of Works and see if they can make more things." Shen Yu spread out the written content in front of Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin finished reading and pondered, "This cement is more useful than I thought. Your Majesty, come over and let me lean on you." After organizing the content, Shen Yu didn't want to move when Shang Junlin came back. Shang Junlin sat down as he wished, and Shen Yu immediately leaned over. Shang Junlin hugged him and slowly said, "A Yu's gift this time is more useful than I thought. How should I repay a Yu?" "Shen Yu, I just proposed some ideas. The Ministry of Works is responsible for the implementation. Instead of repaying me, why don't Your Majesty make things more convenient for the Ministry of Works?" "Shang Junlin, what ideas does you have?" "Shen Yu, I'm just thinking about what the Minister of Works said last time. The Ministry of Works is different from other places. It needs people who know all kinds of skills. Your Majesty, why don't you set up a special exam to select talents for the Ministry of Works? If a country wanted to develop and grow, it needed to develop in all aspects, especially in the area of innovation." This was the principle that Shen Yu understood from that book. This method can be considered. The Ministry of Works is indeed understaffed. I will summon the ministers to discuss this later. Shang Junlin raised his hand and pinched Shen Yu's face. "What about a Yu? A Yu doesn't want anything. Your Majesty has already given me a lot. I just proposed some ideas. Whether they will be beneficial to Dahuan in the end will depend on the future. If Your Majesty really wants to give me something, just treat it as you owe me a request. It won't be too late for Your Majesty to agree to my request when it is proven that these ideas are beneficial to Dahuan." "Okay." As they spoke, Mu Shi brought over the decocted medicine. Shen Yu frowned when he saw the pitch-black medicine. Shang Junlin took the medicine from Mu Shi's hands with amusement. "You can leave first." Mu Shi bowed her head and left. Shang Junlin approached with the medicine. Shen Yu immediately retreated. He couldn't be blamed. Looking at Shang Junlin's posture, he thought of the strange medicine from before. He didn't know what kind of mood Shang Junlin had when he fed it to him. "You, why are you hiding?" Shang Junlin's smile disappeared. He blocked his back with one hand, preventing him from continuing to retreat. "Didn't Imperial Physician Gu say that this medicine is not as bad as the previous one?" Chapter 79. It turns out that Imperial Physician Gu also knows that his medicine tastes bad. Unable to retreat, Shen Yu could only let Shang Junlin come closer. "Once you recover, you won't need to drink these medicines anymore." Shen Yu had to drink all kinds of medicine every day. Shang Junlin was also very distressed. If not, he would not allow Shen Yu to eat sweets. "Your Majesty, you can only coax me with these words." He knew his own body. If it could not be cured, he would have to drink all kinds of medicine for the rest of his life. "I will find someone to cure you. If no one in Dahuan can do it, I will go to other countries to find someone. The world is so big. I don't believe that I can't find a way to cure you." These words were not just empty words. Shang Junlin had already sent people to look for famous doctors. He did not tell Shen Yu. He just wanted to tell him after he was sure of the matter. He did not want to be happy for nothing. If you put a person in your heart, you will involuntarily pay attention to everything about that person. Shen Yu's illness had almost become Shang Junlin's sore point. He asked Imperial Physician Gu for details. Imperial Physician Gu said that if it could not be cured, he could not guarantee that Shen Yu's life would not be in danger. Since ancient times, it was very difficult for people with insufficient health to die of old age. Even if he was the emperor, he could not reverse life and death. Shang Junlin could not accept this fact. He sent a large number of people to look for famous doctors. As long as Shen Yu could be cured, he was willing to pay any price. All of this was done behind Shen Yu's back. Shinyu reached out and touched Shang Junlin's forehead, smoothing out the wrinkles between his eyebrows. Your Majesty, don't worry. I will take good care of myself. This illness has been with me for so many years. To be honest, I have already gotten used to it. If I really get better one day, I might not be able to adapt. Don't frown, I will obediently drink the medicine. Shinyu leaned closer to Shang Junlin and drank the medicine in the bowl in one gulp. He showed the empty bowl to Shang Junlin and said, I've finished it. After saying that, Shinyu smacked his lips. Imperial Physician Gu really didn't lie. This medicine is much better than the last time. Except for that one time, the medicine prescribed by Imperial Physician Gu was not bad. Shinyu would only complain in front of Shang Junlin. If Shang Junlin was not around, he could drink the medicine no matter how bitter it was. Just as Shang Junlin was about to say something, Shinyu opened his mouth to stop him. Although this medicine is not bitter, I still need to eat candied fruit. Your Majesty, please bring me some. Seeing that Shinyu was lazy and didn't want to move, Shang Junlin had to get up and bring over the candied fruit that had been prepared. I need your Majesty to feed me. Shinyu leaned on Shang Junlin, like a chick waiting for a big bird to feed it. Shang Junlin couldn't resist Shinyu's coquettish tone. After feeding Shinyu the candied fruit and water, his depressed mood because of Shinyu's illness was swept away. Does your Majesty have anything else to do this afternoon? Seeing that Shang Junlin had returned to normal, Shinyu's mood also relaxed. I have to summon the Prime Minister and the Minister of Works for a meeting later. Other than that, there is nothing else. Shang Junlin stroked Shinyu's soft long hair. I plan to summon Shinyu to Yuzhang Palace. Your Majesty, do you want to come with me or does you want me to stay? As your Majesty wishes. It's rare to hear such words from a Yu's mouth. I will accompany you first. After the matter here is settled, I will summon the Prime Minister and the others to the palace. The two of them made a decision and asked Eunuch Meng to bring Shinyu over from Consort Dowager's palace. Consort Dowager lived in a relatively remote place. After Shang Junlin ascended the throne, he originally wanted to arrange a good palace for her, but Consort Dowager herself refused. She was used to fighting in the former emperor's harem, so she just wanted to spend the rest of her days in peace. Shinyu had lived a fearful life in the dark prison. After she was sent to the imperial concubine's palace, she was much more well-behaved. She was not really a fool. After she came to her senses, she knew that she was in an ancient world where people's lives were not taken seriously and imperial power was supreme. It was not like those romance novels where love was supreme. After all, she came from the modern world and knew more new things than the people in the ancient palace. After living in Consort Dowager's palace for a while, she gradually gained Consort Dowager's favor. Sister Shinyu, Consort Dowager wants you to go over. A young girl's clear voice sounded from outside the door. Shinyu folded the clothes in her hands. I'm coming. Shinyu didn't dare to delay. She hurriedly put down the matter at hand and rushed to where Consort Dowager was. Someone from Yuzhang Palace has come and wants you to go over. When Consort Dowager saw her, she had a smile on her face. After you go, if Guijun asks you anything, you have to answer well. If Guijun didn't act, you wouldn't be working in my palace right now. Nubi knows. Consort Dowager, don't worry. Nubi was insensible in the past, but it won't happen again. Shinyu obediently replied. Consort Dowager called her in front of her and gave her a few words of advice before saying, go. Shinyu followed behind the young eunuch and walked out of the secluded palace. The nervousness and fear in her heart were gradually magnified. She only knew that her previous actions had violated many taboos after being lectured by the old imperial concubine. If it wasn't for the intervention of the noble lord, it wouldn't be too much for her to be executed. She had stayed in Consort Dowager's palace for a while. At the beginning, she didn't accept her fate. Why can he do it but I can't? Now, she couldn't think of anything. Only she knew how she felt. The journey from Consort Dowager's residence to Yuzhang Palace wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. Along the way, Xinyu thought of many things, but it also seemed that she didn't think of anything. When the little eunuch leading the way stopped, she realized that they had arrived at Yuzhang Palace. The lofty palace gate came into view. This time, Xinyu's state of mind was completely different from last time. Your Majesty, what's the situation with Xinyu now? After handing her over to Shang Junlin, Xinyu didn't ask about this matter. Shang Junlin played with Xinyu's fingers. Xinyu's fingers were white and slender, like the best mutton fat jade. They weren't soft like a woman's fingers. Shang Junlin liked Xinyu's hands very much, especially when these hands grabbed his clothes or held him. Some images flashed through his mind. Shang Junlin coughed softly and retracted his thoughts. When I sent her over, I told the imperial concubine to properly discipline her. Later on, the imperial concubine also sent me a message. She has changed a lot from before. You will know when he sees her later. They didn't have to wait long before eunuch Meng came in with Xinyu. This servant greets your Majesty, Your Majesty. Xinyu bowed politely. You may rise. Shang Junlin wouldn't make things difficult for a little girl. Xinyu looked at the girl whose words and actions were very different from before. She found that she was really different from before. From the moment she came in until now, she didn't look sideways and didn't show any reluctance in her actions. How have you been recently? Xinyu asked warmly. Because of the previous matter, Xinyu had a better impression of Xinyu. She carefully glanced at the emperor sitting next to Xinyu. Seeing that there was no displeasure on his face, she slowly breathed a sigh of relief. This servant has been living very well. Consort Dowager treats this servant very well. The people in Consort Dowager's palace are also very easy to get along with. If you're not used to it, you don't have to call yourself this servant. Xinyu knew that in the world before Xinyu came, everyone was equal. The rules here were very different. If Xinyu could be used by her and didn't have any disloyalty, he didn't mind giving her some convenience. Hearing this, Xinyu looked at Xinyu in surprise. She was born and raised in the modern world. She was really not used to this world where she had to kneel here and there and call herself this servant. But now, she also learned a phrase, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. There weren't many rules in Consort Dowager's palace. Consort Dowager didn't like the palace servants kneeling here and there. Except for calling herself this servant, Xinyu felt that her life in Consort Dowager's palace was more comfortable than before. I called you here because I have something to discuss with you. The Ministry of Works is planning to pave cement roads. If you have any new ideas, you can bring them up. De Huan is about to have its first female official. If you want, you can also change your identity. Cement. A female official. Xinyu looked at Xinyu in shock. She couldn't tell which one shocked her more. She was also a transmigrator. Xinyu had already taken out the cement. Also, was it Xinyu's idea that a female official was also proposed by her? Yes, Xinyu leaned forward slightly. You can think about it. Is there anything you can do for De Huan? As long as you can make a contribution to De Huan, you can change the current situation. The world is so big. It's a pity to stay in the palace forever. What do you think? Xinyu's voice was very soft, with a hint of imperceptible coaxing. Little by little, it drilled into Xinyu's heart. She couldn't help but think, was she really willing to do nothing for the rest of her life? After transmigrating, did she have to be a palace maid for the rest of her life? She was muddle-headed in her previous life. Now that she had a second life, did she still want to live the same life as before? I did such a terrible thing in the past. I even wanted to destroy you. Why are you still willing to give me a chance? Shinyu couldn't figure it out. She knew the current situation. In the past, she was a bastard. Because of this, she couldn't understand Shinyu's actions. Because you also came from that place. Therefore, I am willing to give you a chance. As long as you are willing to use the knowledge you have to build Dahuan. Shinyu looked at Shinyu. There seemed to be a flowing light in her dark eyes. It was tempting to step in. Shinyu stood blankly for a while. Suddenly, she knelt down and bowed to Shinyu. She said, I have made many mistakes in the past. I also know that a verbal apology is useless. I am willing to use the rest of my life to make up for the mistakes I have made. Shinyu wasn't someone who would easily forgive others for their mistakes. He gave Shinyu a chance. First, Shinyu had really changed. Second, Shinyu's appearance was similar to his. He always felt that Shinyu's life experience was related to him. Third, Shinyu's origin. This was also the most important point. Shinyu's understanding of that world was only through that book and Shinchinran. After all, he was different from Shinyu, who had really lived in that world. He was full of curiosity about that world. He wanted to know more about that world. It would be better if he could transfer some of his knowledge to Dahuan. For example, the previous flood control method and cement. After speaking, Shinyu asked Shinyu to go back and think about it carefully. He had already planted a seed in Shinyu's heart. He just needed to wait for this seed to germinate and grow strong. Shang Junlin summoned the Prime Minister and the Minister of Works. He told them about Shinyu's idea. If this matter was to be implemented, it would take a long time. He just wanted to give them a heads up. When they returned to Yuzhang Palace, the sky was already dark. Shinyu was sitting on the soft couch reading a book. Shang Junlin walked over and hugged Shinyu in his arms. He held Shinyu's hand that was by her side. Ayu seems to be very tolerant of Shinyu. I'm more concerned about her background. However, to be able to change Shinyu's character, concubine dowager must have put in a lot of effort. Her fingers were gently pressed. Shinyu relaxed and leaned in Shang Junlin's arms. Did your majesty already expect this? Is that why you sent Shinyu to concubine dowager? I originally thought that I might be able to find some clues about Duke Bei's wife from her. That's why I asked concubine dowager to help. Shang Junlin's 5 fingers intertwined with Shinyu's. You underestimated the person who could survive in the former emperor's harem. Concubine dowager had been in the former emperor's harem for so many years. She had seen all kinds of people. Shinyu was really nothing to her. Fortunately, your majesty's harem is clean. Otherwise. Shinyu thought for a moment. If before entering the palace, Shang Junlin's harem was not empty, would he still agree to enter the palace? Perhaps he would agree. However, his relationship with Shang Junlin would definitely not be like this. There's no such possibility. Shang Junlin pinched Shinyu's chin and made her turn to look at him. He lowered his head and planted a kiss on Shinyu's lips. I don't like those things. It's enough to have a you in this life. Chapter 80. I believe in your majesty. Shinyu naturally believed in Shang Junlin. Regardless of whether Shang Junlin would change in the future, at least in the past and present, he was as he said. As for the future, Shinyu did not want to think too much. As if sensing his concerns, Shang Junlin's kiss moved to the peak of his lips. You, my heart will never contain anyone other than you. Before meeting Shinyu, his heart was originally desolate. It was the arrival of Shinyu that made his heart bloom. This heart full of flowers would only bloom for Shinyu. As if tasting something delicious, he traced his lips little by little. The light color was gradually dyed a deep red. The tip of his tongue opened his teeth and nimbly explored the warm area. Your Majesty. Shinyu grabbed the black clothes beside him and welcomed Shang Junlin's storm-like kiss. All of his senses were lost. Shinyu closed his eyes slightly and moved the tip of his tongue slightly. Shang Junlin's movements paused. Then, as if he was encouraged by something, his attacks became more and more fierce. It was a chase, but also a game of chess. Back and forth, no one was willing to give in easily. Shang Junlin's hand that was pinching Shinyu's chin had unknowingly moved to the back of Shinyu's head. He tightly grasped Shinyu's movements and did not give him any room to retreat. The storm was about to end. Shang Junlin's breath stopped at Shinyu's lips. Both of their breaths were a little unstable. Shang Junlin was unwilling to let go of Shinyu and calmed his breathing in the current position. You is so passionate tonight. Shang Junlin sighed softly. Your Majesty is also very excited. Shinyu had already clearly felt it. Just now, he was completely focused on the kiss. When he came back to his senses, he realized how dangerous their current position was. Jin won't do anything. Just let Jin hug you for a while. As he spoke, he used his lips to lightly touch Shinyu's tender skin. After using up a lot of energy, Shinyu felt lazy and didn't want to move. It wasn't the first time he faced such a situation, but the atmosphere this time was different from the previous times. Shinyu couldn't describe it, but it didn't stop him from wanting to stay with Shang Junlin. Shinyu was sent back to Consort Dowager's residence by the people of Yuzhang Palace. Consort Dowager received the news and summoned Shinyu. Why does Imperial Concubine Dowager care so much about Shinyu? The old mama who served Imperial Concubine Dowager was puzzled. People like lively children when they are old. Do you think Shinyu is not likable now? Concubine Dowager slowly admired her nails. Look, this child knows a lot of new things. Concubine Dowager's hands were well maintained. Her nails were painted with decorative nail polish, which made her hands even more beautiful. The old mama poured a cup of tea for Concubine Dowager. She is indeed more likable than when she came. Concubine Dowager is really good at teaching people. You can even change Shinyu's strange temperament. She is young, so it's normal for her to take detours. His Majesty sent her to me and asked me to help discipline her. She must still be useful. If she is really that kind of person who can't be educated, I'm too lazy to get involved in this mess. Concubine Dowager picked up the tea and took a sip. That's right. We have seen all kinds of people these years. His Majesty is a good person. He always remembers Concubine Dowager's kindness. If it weren't for His Majesty, we wouldn't be able to live such a relaxed life. The old mama sighed. She had been serving Concubine Dowager for a long time. Her master had been with the late emperor since she was in seclusion. It was not easy for her to survive the bloody storm. Moreover, her master was not the kind of person who liked to fight for power and profit. This kind of peaceful life was really good for them. I helped him because it was not easy for a child like him to live in the harem. In addition, the late empress had protected me a lot. After that kind of thing happened, it was very difficult for a child like him to live in the harem. Besides, I didn't do much. It was his own hard work. He is willing to remember my kindness because he has kindness in his heart. But these are not reasons for us to force him to repay me. Do you understand? Concubine Dowager's tone was light, but the meaning behind her words was very heavy. I understand. The old mama's heart trembled. She knew that some rumors had reached Concubine Dowager's ears. I will strictly watch the people in the harem and not let them have any disloyalty. Yes. Concubine Dowager couldn't help but think of many years ago. When the late Empress was still alive, the late Emperor and the late Empress were deeply in love. As the only son of the two, Shang Junlin could be said to be the true god's favored son. When she went to the Empress's palace to pay her respects, she could often see Shang Junlin, who was trying hard to act like a little adult, studying by the Empress's side. At that time, who would have thought that the most favored son of the Middle Palace would one day be sent to hell? After the late Empress died, the late Emperor, under the instigation of the treacherous courtiers, did not care about their many years of marriage. He killed more than 100 people of the Empress's maternal family. In one night, Shang Junlin lost his mother, lost the strong support of his family, and did not have the ability to protect himself. She wanted to take this child over and raise him, but the late Emperor gave a strict order that no one was allowed to take care of him. At that time, she did not have any status in the harem and could only secretly help him. When she saw this child again, she could not see any shadow of the past from him. He was malicious and ruthless, like an avenger returning from hell. She did not know what happened between the late Emperor and the late Empress, but it must be very serious if the late Emperor could kill the late Empress's whole family overnight and take away all the favor of his only son. Unfortunately, the insiders were all dealt with. She secretly investigated for a long time, but found no clues. Concubine Dowager, Miss Shen Yu is here. Concubine Dowager sighed and collected her thoughts. Let her in. After Shen Yu came in, she respectfully bowed to Concubine Dowager. She respected the person who gave her a new life from the bottom of her heart. Concubine Dowager called her to the front, took her hand and patted it. Seeing that you came back in one piece, I am relieved. Concubine Dowager. Shen Yu's heart suddenly warmed. She had almost never received the care of the elders since she was a child. Beside Concubine Dowager, she felt for the first time what it was like to be carefully taught by the elders. Feeling Shen Yu's attachment, Concubine Dowager smiled softly. His Majesty and Gue Jun asked me something, but I don't know what to do. Shen Yu omitted the part about time travel and summarized what had happened in Yuzhang Palace. Concubine Dowager heard Concubine Dowager's words. This shows that His Majesty and Gue Jun value you. I also heard that His Majesty intends to use female officials. This is an opportunity. I know you have a lot of strange ideas, but it is a waste of your talent to be trapped in my remote palace. Go ahead and do it. You are still young and have a lot of opportunities. The world is unfair to women, so it is hard for His Majesty and Gue Jun to consider women. Yes, women should not be the accessories of men. Shen Yu agreed with this point. In the backward ancient times, as an emperor, he was willing to face the value of women. Shen Yu admired this point. Concubine Dowager, I am a little worried. Can I really do it well? Shen Yu hesitated. It was not that she did not want to. If there was such an opportunity, who would be willing to live a muddle-headed life? However, she was a little afraid. If she really agreed, could she bear such a heavy burden? Good child, don't be afraid. Since His Majesty and Gue Jun proposed it, they will naturally help you. If you believe in me, I am also willing to do my best. Everything has a process from nothing to something. There is nothing to worry about. Yes. Shen Yu nodded heavily. Shen Yu received Shen Yu's reply the next day. Shang Junlin went to the morning court. Shen Yu closed her eyes and lay on the bed for a while before sitting up. Shen Yu put clean clothes on the side and slowly put them on. When she got out of bed, she pulled her leg. Fortunately, she did not directly sit back down. Last night, she should not have been obsessed and promised Shang Junlin to help him with her leg. Shen Yu frowned when she felt uncomfortable. Except for that time in the bathhouse, this was the second time. Although they did not really do it, Shinyu still could not ignore that strange feeling. Mu Shi, who had been waiting outside, heard the noise and came in with hot water. Young master, Shinyu sent a message. She said that she is willing to agree, but she said that she hopes to continue to stay with concubine dowager. Shinyu washed up and combed his hair with Mu Shi's help. Resisting the discomfort, he sat on the soft couch and slowly breathed a sigh of relief. I know. Ask her to sort out the things that she thinks are useful and send them over after she has sorted them out. Shinyu was very tired today and did not want to deal with the business. Yes, young master, do you want to eat? His Majesty specially ordered the small kitchen to always prepare food. Send it over. Ask someone to set up a small table. I will eat here. Mu Shi deftly did what Shinyu asked. Not long after, the small kitchen presented the dishes. Shinyu held the chopsticks and said, There is a new person in the small kitchen. There were several dishes on the table that Shinyu had not seen before. His Majesty asked the imperial chef in the palace who knows how to cook other dishes to send them over. Today, they are served with several dishes that His Majesty often uses. His Majesty, try them and see if they are to your liking. The palace servant in charge of delivering the dishes replied. Shinyu tried them one by one. These dishes were not the same as the usual dishes in the palace, but they tasted very good. Shinyu only ate a few mouthfuls and his appetite was greatly improved. He even ate more rice than usual. When Shang Junlin came back from the morning court, Shinyu just finished eating. Seeing that he was eating happily, Shang Junlin directly asked someone to add more bowls and chopsticks, and Shinyu finished all the leftover dishes. Why didn't His Majesty ask someone to serve the dishes again? Shinyu leaned against the cushion behind him. Shang Junlin did not make room for him even though he came. Shang Junlin ate very quickly. His many years in the army had a great impact on him. Just like last night, when they were in the middle of the night, Shinyu slept until almost noon, Shang Junlin was still able to get up early and go to the morning court. After a while, Shang Junlin finished eating. He took the handkerchief from eunuch Meng and wiped his mouth. He said, You left so much food. Didn't you leave it especially for Jin? Who left it for you? Shinyu turned his face away. Okay, you did not deliberately leave it for Jin. Shang Junlin, who was full, was very easy to talk to. It was Jin who was very hungry, okay? Eunuch Meng brought people to remove the tableware and table. Shang Junlin sat on the soft couch, took Shinyu in his arms, and kissed him on the cheek. You can't be at odds with Jin because of what happened last night. Last night, you agreed to it. I'm not at odds. I'm just a little uncomfortable. The atmosphere last night was too good. Shinyu responded to Shang Junlin with a kiss for the first time, which caused the man to be a little excited. Later, Shinyu could not resist and used his hand to help him. The two of them made out on the couch, and under the deep gaze of the man, he inexplicably suggested using his leg, then it got out of hand. Jin checked this morning. You're not injured. This time, you used the ointment sent by Imperial Physician Gu. Is it better than last time? Chapter 81. Shinyu vaguely remembered such a thing. At that time, his mind was in a mess. Now that he thought about it, there was indeed a slippery feeling. His thoughts unconsciously drifted to the night before. Beneath him was a soft bed, and in front of him was a hot breath. He was like a fish thrown to the surface of the water by the wind and waves, bobbing up and down with the waves. In a daze, a man's low voice sounded in his ears, I brought the ointment sent by Imperial Physician Gu. You won't feel uncomfortable this time, it was cold and hot. The wind and waves became stronger. Shang Junlin's heart itched when he saw the scarlet color crawling up his porcelain white skin. He had seen Shen Yu's calm and self-controlled side, and he had also seen his absent-minded side. Regardless of whether it was the former or the latter, his heart was filled with love. Next time, I'll ask Imperial Physician Gu to send more. Shang Junlin leaned close to Shen Yu's ear and whispered, "Fortunately, I put away the ointment last time." "Your Majesty, what do you think of Imperial Physician Gu's ointment?" Shen Yu pushed Shang Junlin away. He didn't want to be so close to him. "What do you mean?" "His duty is to take good care of a Yu's body." Shen Yu looked at him faintly. "Does that include this?" Shang Junlin held back his laughter and nodded. Shen Yu was speechless. "Alright, I'm just teasing you. I'm not that stupid. I won't bring this matter to Imperial Physician Gu." Shang Junlin smiled and pinched Shen Yu's earlobe. Shen Yu's leg was still uncomfortable, and he didn't want to discuss this topic with the culprit. "Your Majesty, have Miss Fong and the others' official positions been confirmed yet?" It had been a few days since the results of the court examination were released. The other candidates who passed the court examination had all taken up their positions. Jiang Huiqing and He Qingyu had also taken up positions in the Hanlin Academy. Only Fang Jie, who had placed second, had yet to come up with a plan. Originally, Shang Junlin wanted to take up a post in the Hanlin Academy, just like the previous banquet champion. However, he was met with fierce opposition from the courtiers. The Hanlin Academy was the starting point for one to enter the cabinet. They felt that it was enough to find a leisurely official position for Fang Jie. There was no need to put her in the Hanlin Academy. Of course, there were more ministers who hoped that Shang Junlin would retract his order. They could not accept being an official in the same court as a woman. Not everyone had bad intentions towards the woman, but many people were unable to change their preconceived notions in a short period of time. Before the incident, it was undoubtedly a fantasy for a woman to be an official. Speaking of this matter, Shang Junlin rubbed his forehead as if he had a headache. The others didn't have any problems. They were even willing to take a step back and give He Qingyu and Jiang Huiqing higher official positions. Only Fang Jie refused to budge. "Shen Yu, what do they plan to do with Miss Fang?" "Something that has already been announced to the world can't be retracted." "Shang Junlin, they want me to bestow her a county lord or some other title of nobility." "Shen Yu, giving her a title of nobility but not giving her any real power. Not only does this shut the mouths of the people, but it also achieves their goal. It's a good suggestion that kills two birds with one stone." Shang Junlin, currently, only the Prime Minister is willing to let Fang Jie enter the cabinet as an official. The other two still refuse to budge. The Dahuan cabinet had a lot of power. It had reached its peak during the reign of the previous emperor. After Shang Junlin ascended to the throne, he took back a lot of power. However, some of it was still in the hands of the cabinet. Other than the Prime Minister, the other two ministers in the cabinet were all from aristocratic families. If Shang Junlin wanted to do something that harmed the interests of the aristocratic families, the first obstacle he would encounter would be them. Both sides refused to budge. Now, the matter had entered a stalemate. Although Fang Jie was an exception this year, the triennial Qiongling banquet still had to be held. In previous years, it was held by the aristocratic families. However, because of Fang Jie's matter this year, Shang Junlin simply threw the matter to the Ministry of Rites. On one hand, the Qiongling banquet was a large-scale banquet held to congratulate the high school students. On the other hand, it was an opportunity for the students who had yet to enter the officialdom to familiarize themselves with the official officials of the Dahuan cabinet. In order to show the importance of the banquet, the princes would usually attend. Shang Junlin didn't have any children. His brothers and relatives had been sent far away by him. He would either send his ministers to represent him or go personally. Qiongling banquet. Does your majesty want to go? Shen Yu heard Shang Junlin mention it and asked. I plan to go. You will go with me. Shen Yu knew why Shang Junlin chose to go personally. Too many things had happened in the imperial examinations this year. The emperor's presence could not only show the importance of this matter, reassure the students, but also suppress the arrogance of some aristocratic families. Shen Yu was also a man. When Shang Junlin wanted to bring him along, no one objected. The main reason was that they knew that Shang Junlin wouldn't listen even if they did. Moreover, they would offend Shen Yu, who was highly favored by the emperor. It wasn't worth it. After the relevant regulations were finalized, the students also received the news. This year, His Majesty will bring His Majesty along. I finally have the chance to see for myself what the rumored His Majesty looks like. Don't you want to see His Majesty with your own eyes? If you can enter the imperial court as an official, you will have the chance to see His Majesty. The chance to see His Majesty is even rarer. I heard that the fraud this time was discovered in time because of His Majesty. Otherwise, we would all be in trouble. His Majesty is willing to bring His Majesty to the Qiongling banquet. It seems that the rumors are true. His Majesty really values His Majesty. Isn't the imperial harem forbidden from interfering in politics? Even if His Majesty dotes on His Majesty, he shouldn't bring His Majesty to such an occasion, right? Why shouldn't he? His Majesty brought His Majesty to the court examination. Speaking of which, it seems that no official is impeaching His Majesty. Isn't that so? They're all focused on the second place. When compared to Miss Fong's matter, I'm afraid that other matters are nothing in their eyes. His Majesty is really going to use female officials. It feels so strange. These things aren't for us to worry about now. Let's focus on what's at hand. That's true. It's the Qiongling banquet. I wonder if the poem is true. Will Miss Fong attend that day? I wonder what kind of woman she will be. She's a very capable and responsible woman. She's not afraid of power. If she can enter the imperial court as an official, I believe that she'll be a good official. The person who spoke had witnessed the farce at the Yingxing Tower with his own eyes. He had a good impression of Fong Jiayi. He was sure that in that situation, even a man might not have done as well as Fong Jiayi. The Fong residence. Lord Fong had long predicted that his daughter would encounter great resistance if she wanted to enter the imperial court as an official. He just didn't expect it to be so difficult at the beginning. After the Qiongling banquet, there will be a conclusion to this matter. Lord Fong sighed as he looked at his determined daughter. After the Qiongling banquet, the appointment of an official couldn't be delayed any longer. Although it seemed that the aristocratic families were suppressing Shang Junlin, that was only because Shang Junlin didn't want to push the aristocratic families too hard. Father has already done a lot for me. I'll walk the path in the future on my own. From the moment she had this dream, Fong Jiayi knew that the path she had to walk was destined to be bumpy and full of thorns. In the past, she didn't dare to tell others about her dream because she knew how unbelievable and shocking it was. She thought that her dream would remain a dream for the rest of her life. She didn't expect that she would have the chance to make it a reality. It was so rare that the first people to tell her that she wasn't indulging in fantasy were the two men who stood at the peak of power in the Great Han dynasty. From that moment on, she made a decision. She must walk a new path for all the women in the world. Soon, it was the day of the Qiongling banquet. Shang Junlin changed into a less formal imperial robe. Shen Yu wanted to experience the atmosphere among the students, so he didn't wear the robes that represented his status as an emperor. A white wide-sleeved robe was draped over a light blue gauze overcoat. His long hair was unbound and draped softly behind his back. His facial features were exquisite, his eyes dark and bottomless. He had a faint smile on his face and held a folding fan in his hand. The Cheonglin banquet was held outside the palace. There was a special residence for it. Shen Yu and Shang Junlin got on the carriage and slowly drove out of the palace. It's all thanks to Miss Fang. Otherwise, His Majesty would have been impeached by the imperial censor for taking me to the court examination. Shen Yu sat in the carriage and looked at Shang Junlin. That's right. With Fang Jia's incident before, they chose to ignore the court examination. Shang Junlin was basically reviewing memorials in Yuzhang Palace. Shen Yu occasionally glanced at them. Most of the memorials were about Fang Jia. Shang Junlin was too lazy to deal with them, so he asked people to take them out and put them aside. Your Majesty, you can distribute these unimportant memorials to the ministers. If Your Majesty is worried about the aristocratic families, you can promote a group of officials with clean backgrounds. Shen Yu suggested. The cabinet originally had the power to deal with these matters. However, the aristocratic families have been growing in power these years. If I give all the power to the cabinet, I won't be at ease. Yu is right. When I train a group of officials who are useful, I won't be as busy as I am now. When Shang Junlin first ascended the throne, he suffered a lot in the hands of the aristocratic families. Later, he used bloody means to suppress a group of ambitious people and slowly gathered the power of the imperial court into his own hands. The appointment from the imperial court had not been announced yet. Jiang Huiqing was still living with He Qingyu. He originally planned to rent a house for himself, but He Qingyu persuaded him not to. Huiqing, are you not used to living here? Or do you find me annoying? When He Qingyu said this, the corners of his eyes drooped slightly, giving off an inexplicable feeling of being abandoned. Feeling guilty, Jiang Huiqing hurriedly explained, No, why would I find Brother Qingyu annoying? I'm just afraid that you will find me troublesome. Why would Huiqing cause me trouble? It's clearly Huiqing who has helped me a lot, He Qingyu interrupted him. Moreover, Huiqing has also given me money for food and accommodation. You can even help me from time to time when you're living here. Why would I find you troublesome? He Qingyu calmly sized up Jiang Huiqing and continued, If you have a place to live outside, I have nothing to say if you want to move out. However, you don't even have a place to live. Moreover, I'm used to having Huiqing by my side. If you really move out, I'm afraid I won't be able to adapt in a short period of time. It won't be too late for Huiqing to consider this matter after the appointment from the imperial court has been announced. Jiang Huiqing thought about it. That was true. During this period of time, he had become used to living and eating with He Qingyu. If he really moved out, whether the new place was to his liking was another matter. First, he himself would be very uncomfortable. Just as He Qingyu had said, he wasn't living in his house for free. The two of them arrived at the Cheonglin banquet together. One was the Zhuang Yuan while the other was the Tanhua. As soon as they entered, they were surrounded by people. Some people wanted to get closer to He Qingyu, while others wanted to find Jiang Huiqing. The two of them were slowly separated by the crowd. Yi Jianming's followers finally found an opportunity. They looked at each other and sent someone to secretly follow them. Shen Yu got off the carriage and separated from Shang Junlin, walking into the crowd. Jiang Huiqing was talking to the people who kept coming up. Suddenly, he felt a pat on his shoulder. He turned around and suddenly met a pair of smiling eyes. Brother Yu. Chapter 82. Shen Yu nodded his head. Who is this brother? The people on the side also saw Shen Yu. They were surprised to see that he had a good temperament. He was one of the more knowledgeable people in this year's exam. He could speak to more than half of the people. For someone like the young master in blue, he definitely had an impression of him if he had seen him before. This is a good friend of mine. You can call him young Master Yu. I have something to do here, so I'll leave for a while. Sorry. Seeing that he had a friend, the others didn't want to keep pestering him. They made an appointment to continue chatting next time before letting him go. Jiang Huiqing struggled to get out of the crowd. He walked to Xinyu's side and glanced behind him. What are you looking for? Xinyu pressed the handle of his fan against his chin. Are you not satisfied with seeing me? Why would I be? Jiang Huiqing blinked his eyes. I just feel that it's rare to see you alone. Didn't that person come with you? It turned out that he was looking for Shang Junlin. Of course he came. If he didn't come, how could I come alone? He's not here. I know you guys feel uncomfortable seeing him, so I asked him to go do his own things. Xinyu answered. Since Shang Junlin was here, there were some procedures that needed to be confirmed by him personally. There were also some ministers that he needed to meet. In comparison, Xinyu seemed to be very free. I didn't expect that you and that person would really come. Jiang Huiqing said as they walked to a less crowded place. The situation this time is different. Miss Fang's matter is too shocking. They are still making a fuss. Xinyu didn't mind revealing some details. For this matter, they were even willing to give you and brother He a higher official position. Indeed. After all, before this matter came out, no one expected that the second place of this year's exam would be a woman. Jiang Huiqing smiled shyly. To be honest, at first I thought I could at least get second place. At that time, I made a bet with His Majesty, saying that you would be the champion. As a result, His Majesty won both times, Xinyu said with a smile. How can Huiqing be so favored by brother Yu? Jiang Huiqing hadn't expected this and stilled. Huiqing accepts defeat to brother Qingyu and Miss Fang. What do you all think of Miss Fang's matter? Xinyu really wanted to know what this batch of examinees thought of women entering the imperial court as officials. I have the same opinion as brother Qingyu. I think Miss Fang is worthy of the heavy responsibility. Among the others, many of them were convinced by Miss Fang's essay. Although they have some reservations about a woman being an official, their opposition is not so firm, Jiang Huiqing replied after sorting out the information he had received these days. Actually, it's all thanks to the announcement of everyone's essays when the results were released. The facts are right in front of them, and they have no choice but to admit it. After reading Miss Fang's article, many people felt that they were not as good as her. Even I felt the same way. Fang Jiayi's essay had a unique point of view, digging into areas they hadn't considered. It was novel and unique among all the answers, and made people's eyes light up. After Jiang Huiqing finished reading, he gained a lot of new insights. Afterwards, he pulled He Qingyu to discuss it. Both of them admired Fang Jiayi for being able to write such an essay as a woman. At the time of the Prince of Yu's incident, I felt that this woman wasn't simple. Xinyu's eyes curved as he thought of the Prince of Yu who was unlucky because of this incident. A woman, after such an incident, can still stand out to seek justice for herself and the people who were hurt. Even if the other party was a member of the imperial family, she didn't back down. Yes, even if it's a man, how many people can do what Fang Jiayi did? Jiang Huiqing was also present at the time. If it wasn't for his admiration, he wouldn't have acted as a bridge when Fang Jiayi came looking for him. Xinyu casually glanced behind him and suggested, let's find a pavilion to sit for a while. Jiang Huiqing didn't object. The residence where the Qianglin banquet was held was very large. It was richly ornamented and the scenery was extraordinarily beautiful. Every certain distance, there were pavilions for people to rest in. The two chose one with few people and walked in. Seeing the two enter the pavilion and sit down, with no intention of leaving for the time being, the people following behind the two looked at each other. One person stayed behind to keep an eye on them, while the other quietly returned. Did you see clearly? Wasn't that He Qingyu by his side? Hearing the report from the person who came back, a young master frowned and asked. They had always regarded Yi Jianming as their leader. When they saw Yi Jianming being suppressed by a poor boy who came out of nowhere, they wanted to teach him a lesson. Yes, this servant saw clearly. That person was a bit shorter than young Master He, and the color of his clothes was different. Oh, right, that person didn't tie up his hair. Do you know that person's identity? I don't know. I only heard Jiang Huiqing call him a brother Yu. Surnamed Yu. The young master who spoke glanced at the person beside him. Are there any aristocratic families surnamed Yu in the capital? As far as I know, there aren't any. There's no one surnamed Yu in this year's imperial examinations. A person who came out of nowhere. The person who spoke held his chin. He's nothing to be afraid of. Come, let's go take a look. Shouldn't we greet Brother Jianming first? The other person was a bit hesitant. And it's the Qionglin banquet right now. If something happens, you're just a coward. We won't really do anything to that Jiang guy. We just want to make friends with him. How could we really do anything at the Qionglin banquet? We're not stupid. They weren't like Yi Jianming, who had been carefully raised by his family. His goal for participating in the imperial examinations was also very simple. He wanted to be in the top 3 and enter the Hanlin Academy to prepare for entering the cabinet in the future. Originally, everything had been planned very well. Who would have thought that 3 dark horses would suddenly appear? They didn't care why that person from the He clan of Jiangnan would suddenly become an official. As for the other 2, one was a woman, and the other was from a poor family with no foundation. They could still make some moves. Shen Yu and Jiang Huiqing chatted for a while. Suddenly, they heard footsteps approaching. Shen Yu turned to look. It was a group of young masters dressed in luxurious clothes. He understood immediately. Brother Yu, are they your friends? Seeing that these people were clearly heading in their direction, Jiang Huiqing was slightly confused. I don't know them. Do you know them, Huiqing? I don't, it's fate that brought us together. Just because you didn't know each other before doesn't mean you won't know each other in the future. Don't you think so, Lord Tanhua? As they spoke, the group of people had already entered the pavilion. Shen Yu sized them up one by one and found that one of them could be considered an old acquaintance. He was the kind of person who had made friends with many times in his previous life. Who are you? Feeling the malice from these people, Jiang Huiqing frowned. He found a seat and sat down. The person who seemed to be the leader said, My surname is Xiao. The 2 people beside me are surnamed Dian and Liu. We just want to get to know you, the Tanhua master. We don't have any other intentions. But I don't want to know you. Jiang Huiqing didn't have a good impression of these people. He didn't want to be entangled with them. He didn't expect Jiang Huiqing to be so direct. Young Master Zhao's heart choked. He thought that this kind of person from a poor family would be easy to hook up with. He didn't expect that he would be rejected. If there's nothing else, you can leave. Jiang Huiqing's face turned cold. He didn't hesitate to chase them away. You don't know what's good for you. We took the initiative to make friends with you because we think highly of you. Otherwise, do you think that you, a poor family without any foundation, can stand firm in the capital just because you are the Tanhua master? Young Master Zhao was angered and threatened. Another person said, Young Master He, who often hangs out with you, is only from the He family in Jiangnan. If something really happens, they can't do anything. Instead of clinging on to him, why don't you change your target? If the people you are on good terms with are us, it will be much more convenient in the future. This is my business. I don't need you to worry about it. Jiang Huiqing's tone became colder and colder. Also, if something happens, only the imperial court and His Majesty can make the decision. Or is it that your power surpasses His Majesty's? We didn't say that. With such a big accusation, who would dare to admit it? Then what do you mean? Shen Yu said while waving his fan. Aren't you implying that you have a lot of power? Young Master Zhao and the others' attention was on Jiang Huaiqing. It wasn't until Shen Yu spoke that they diverted some attention to him. Who are you? Huaiqing's good friend. I can't stand you using your power to force people. Are all the aristocratic families in the capital like this? Shen Yu deliberately pretended to be an outsider. It's really an eye-opener. Because of Zhen Beiho's favoritism, Shen Yu rarely went to the big events in the capital. Very few people knew him. After entering the palace, outsiders had even fewer opportunities to see him. It was not strange that these people did not know Shen Yu. If everyone knew him, he wouldn't dare to walk around here with his real appearance. Thinking of the purpose of this visit, young Master Zhao took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. We really just admire young Master Zhang's talent and want to make friends with him. I've never seen anyone make friends with such an attitude. Instead of saying that you are making friends, it's more appropriate to say that you are seeking revenge. Shen Yu tilted his head and pretended not to understand. Or is this a unique way for aristocratic families in the capital to make friends? You. Young Master Zhao was so stifled that he couldn't breathe. He pointed at Shen Yu and said, "You," for a long time, but he couldn't say, "You." Seeing that the situation was not good, one of the people who had hesitated at the beginning secretly summoned a servant and whispered some instructions. The servant quietly retreated. Shen Yu saw the servant disappear at the end of the path and pretended not to see. The servant hurried to find Yi Jianming and told him exactly what happened in the pavilion. After listening, Yi Jianming's expression changed again and again. He scolded in a low voice, "A bunch of idiots. Of all the times, they chose the Qianglin banquet. They deliberately set him up. But he couldn't leave them alone. He was the one who brought them in. If something really happened, he would be the first to be blamed." Hurriedly bidding farewell to the people around him, Yi Jianming rushed to the place the servant mentioned with an ugly expression. When Yi Jianming arrived, young Master Zhao and the others were confronting someone with red faces and thick necks. On the other hand, Jiang Huaiqing's side was at ease, as if they were playing with people. "Shut up." Yi Jianming adjusted the expression on his face, walked over, and said to Jiang Huaiqing and Shen Yu, "I'm sorry, I apologize to the two of you on their behalf. If they've been rude in any way, please forgive them. We don't dare. How could we dare to be dissatisfied with aristocratic families?" Shen Yu opened his fan and covered half of his face. "If one day they disappear without a trace, we won't even know how they disappeared. How could it be?" Yi Jianming glanced at those people. He couldn't imagine how many things they shouldn't have said. How could they be so stupid, daring to say anything when provoked? What disappear? I didn't know that there was someone who could make people disappear without a trace under my eyes. Chapter 83. A dignified voice came from behind. Yi Jianming stiffly turned his head. The moment he saw who it was, a great panic rose in his heart. He couldn't help but start to regret. Why did he bring those people from the Zhao family in? Why did he acquiesce when they proposed to deal with Jiang Huaiqing? He only thought that the aristocratic families could hold up the sky in the capital, but forgot that there was imperial power above the aristocratic families. The one who could decide everyone's fate was not the aristocratic families, but the real master of Dehuan, Shang Junlin. Seeing Yi Jianming's increasingly ugly face, the other people finally realized the seriousness of the matter. After calming down, they suddenly realized that they had said a lot of things that they shouldn't have said. They all knelt down in panic. Shang Junlin glanced at the minister beside him and walked to Shen Yu's side. He said in a deep voice, "This is the outstanding son of an aristocratic family you were talking about, officially?" There was an inexplicable sarcasm in his voice. The questioned official's face turned red and then white. He hurriedly knelt down and begged for forgiveness. "It's my fault for not teaching him well. Your Majesty, please forgive me." Official Yi and the other aristocratic family officials were just discussing with Shang Junlin about this year's examination. Other than Fang Jiayi's matter, of course they wanted to seek the best interests for the aristocratic families. Who would have thought that before the discussion reached a conclusion, the son of an aristocratic family with the best results had an accident? Official Yi almost vomited blood in his heart. Yi Jianming was carefully cultivated by the Yi family. Not only did he not become the champion, but he also had such an accident. He could be considered as a waste. His Majesty had always been afraid of the aristocratic families being too powerful, so he had always supported the commoners to balance the power of the aristocratic families. Now, His Majesty had heard such words with his own eyes. He had heard it with his own ears, but there was no chance to remedy it. No, it wasn't really heard with his own ears. After all, those words didn't come from the mouth of an aristocratic family's son. The truth was still to be discussed. After thinking this through, Official Yi looked in the direction of the person who had just spoken. Other than Jiang Huiqing, there was also a handsome young man. The lower half of the young man's face was covered by a fan, only revealing his delicate eyebrows. Feeling his gaze, Shen Yu looked over. His eyebrows curved, but there was no smile in his eyes. Official Yi was in a trance for a moment, but he suddenly realized that this young man was none other than Shen Guijun, who had left the palace with His Majesty. Why was he with Jiang Huiqing? What was his relationship with Jiang Huiqing? A series of questions flooded into Lord Yi's mind. He didn't dare to think too deeply about whether what happened today was a coincidence or a trap set up in advance. Shang Junlin's tone was cold. Indeed, they need to be disciplined. Today, at the Qionglin banquet, they even dared to make a move on the Tanhua of the imperial court. In the future, when they enter the imperial court and have more power in their hands, won't they do more things that they shouldn't? I know my mistake. Student knows his mistake. Since you know your crime, then you can't be exempted from the punishment you deserve. Otherwise, wouldn't the world say that His Majesty is biased towards the aristocratic families? Where is the dignity of Your Majesty and the aristocratic families? Shen Yu hooked Shang Junlin's finger with his hand hidden under his sleeve. Your Majesty, don't you agree? Guijun is right. Today, we are both here. Otherwise, no one would know that the Tanhua was bullied. Official Yi, why don't you tell us, what is the punishment for threatening and humiliating an official of the Great Huan dynasty? It seemed that His Majesty wasn't going to let this matter rest. Official Yi and the kneeling aristocratic family officials felt defeated. They didn't have time to care about the poor children and the female officials. How to prevent His Majesty from taking advantage of this opportunity to punish the aristocratic families was the most important thing. Only now did young Master Zhao and the others realize how big of a mess they had made. Young Master Zhao's face turned pale. The Zhao family had always relied on the Yi family. If Yi Jianming was implicated because of him, or even if all the aristocratic families were implicated, his family would be finished. Your Majesty, I was the one who did this. It has nothing to do with young Master Yi. Your Majesty, please understand. Young Master Zhao made up his mind and kowtowed a few times, taking all the blame on himself. I was the one who admired young Master Jiang and wanted to get to know him. After being rejected, I was angry and spoke without thinking. This really has nothing to do with young Master Yi. The rest of the people also reacted and took the blame on themselves. Seeing that there was room for manipulation, the aristocratic family officials looked at each other while Shang Junlin's gaze fell on the aristocratic family members. One of them opened his mouth and said, "Your Majesty, please investigate the truth of the matter." Shen Yu smiled coldly. "Does this official mean that I would slander young Master Yi? Not to mention that I don't know young Master Yi and have no enmity with each other. I am also from an aristocratic family. Why would I lie?" Shen Yu knew that these people wouldn't admit to their crimes obediently. In order to minimize the losses, he had to find a few scapegoats. Thus, during the argument just now, he intentionally or unintentionally led these people to talk about Yi Jianming. Otherwise, why would he waste so much time talking to these people? Jiang Huiqing sensed his intentions. The two of them cooperated and got some information out of him. This official doesn't dare. I think you are very daring. It's not easy to survive in the officialdom, so what if you're third in the imperial examination? You don't have any foundation in the capital. How far do you think you can go? These words were said by Yi Jianming himself. Does he really know nothing about it? Do you believe it? Shen Yu put down his fan and leaned on Shang Junlin. "Your Majesty, take them away first. Don't ruin the Qianglin banquet. When the banquet is over, punish them accordingly." What do you think? Shang Junlin looked down at the officials kneeling on the ground. This official accepts the decree. What could be said had been said. What else could they say? Fortunately, it was dealt with after the Qianglin banquet, which gave them time to respond. "All right, all of you may rise." The guards came to take Yi Jianming and his group away. Shang Junlin took Shen Yu and left. Jiang Huiqing followed behind them. The remaining officials looked at each other. They didn't immediately follow. Instead, they gathered together and discussed in low voices. "Say, do you think today's incident was an accident?" This question is no longer important. Whether it was an accident or a coincidence, it has already happened. Moreover, His Majesty saw it. After all the previous incidents, do you still think that His Majesty is an easy person to deal with? We didn't send His Majesty a person to restrain him. We sent him a helper into the palace. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. Let's think about how to deal with this matter. Lord Yi interrupted them. Let's first talk to the two officials in the cabinet and see what's going on. I originally thought that Jiang Huiqing was easy to deal with. I didn't expect him to be in contact with His Majesty. Tell your people not to lay a hand on him unless you have a complete grasp of the situation. Some lessons should be learned once, Lord Yi instructed. Yes. On the other side, He Qingyu received the news. He apologized to the people he was talking to and hurried over. Huiqing, are you all right? He Qingyu looked at Jiang Huiqing from head to toe. He was relieved when he saw that Jiang Huiqing was fine. I'm fine. His Majesty and His Majesty are here. No one can hurt me. Jiang Huiqing allowed him to look at him. Seeing that he was worried, he comforted him. I shouldn't have let you go alone. He Qingyu was very upset. If he had followed, those people wouldn't have dared to lay a hand on Jiang Huiqing. I'm really fine. His Majesty and His Majesty are both here. Jiang Huiqing pointed to the front. He Qingyu let go of Jiang Huiqing's arm and bowed to the two people not far away. Greetings, Your Majesty and His Majesty. No need to be so polite. Shen Yu pulled Shang Junlin over and joked, I see you guys together all day long. When I saw Huiqing today, I was curious why you weren't with him. I didn't pay attention for a while and was separated by the crowd. Thank you for helping Huiqing. In fact, we also have to thank him. If it wasn't for today's incident, who knows how long your appointment would have been delayed. This time, if the aristocratic families want to protect Yi Jianming themselves, they will have to make some concessions. Shen Yu didn't expect that things would take such a big turn for the better in such a short time. When they reached the intersection, the two sides separated. Brother Qingyu, you don't want me to move. Are you worried that the aristocratic families will lay a hand on me? After this incident, Jiang Huiqing thought deeper. That's just one of the reasons. He Qingyu admitted. Huiqing, you don't have to think too much. What I said to you before wasn't an excuse. The real reason is that I'm used to living with you. I didn't think too much. It's just. Jiang Huiqing sighed. Forget it. I'll have to trouble Brother Qingyu during this time. Huiqing, you don't have to feel pressured living with me. Because of my family, they won't dare to lay a hand on me. After this incident, they won't dare to act rashly. He Qingyu suddenly stopped and faced Jiang Huiqing. He said in a low voice, as the eldest son of the family, I've been taught that I have to bear the responsibility of the family in the future. Because of the heavy workload of school, my younger brothers and sisters were also ordered not to disturb me. Every time they wanted to get close to me, they would be quickly called away by the elders. Getting along with Huiqing has been one of my wishes since I was young. Jiang Huiqing unconsciously followed He Qingyu's words and imagined the scene of the young He Qingyu wanting to get close to his younger brothers and sisters but unable to do so because of the heavy responsibility on his shoulders. His heart softened and he went forward to hug He Qingyu. If Brother Qingyu doesn't mind, you can treat me as your younger brother in the future. He Qingyu's body stiffened. He slowly put his hand on Jiang Huiqing's back and said in a hoarse voice. Okay. The Qianglin banquet officially began. Shang Junlin held Xinyu's hand and walked to the main seat. He said a few words of encouragement and then started the banquet. With Shang Junlin present, whether it was the officials or the reserves who were about to enter the officialdom, everyone was nervous. Shang Junlin also knew that everyone would be restrained if he was here. After the normal procedure, he left with Xinyu. After they left, the atmosphere gradually warmed up. There were not many people outside. Xinyu held Shang Junlin's hand and walked slowly along the path. Your Majesty, don't you think that He Qingyu pays too much attention to Jiang Huiqing? Xinyu felt that Shang Junlin was euphemistically saying this. Huiqing didn't feel anything wrong at all. Their affairs should be handled by them. Yu cares about them, so why not care more about me? Shang Junlin treated Jiang Huiqing differently because of Xinyu. He didn't care about the relationship between the officials. Your Majesty, how else do you want me to care about you? Ask about your well-being every day. Greet you in the morning and evening. That's not necessary. Shang Junlin suddenly stopped and pulled Xinyu into his arms. Yu just needs to pay less attention to others. Xinyu was caught off guard and bumped into Shang Junlin's arms. She smelled the ambergris on Shang Junlin's body and said with a smile, Then I'll think of your Majesty every morning, noon, and night, okay? Chapter 84. Is it only for these few days? What about the rest of the time? Won't you miss me? Shang Junlin was still not satisfied. Then what does your Majesty want to think? I think of you every moment of every day. Shang Junlin hinted. Oh, I know. Xinyu dragged her tone. Your Majesty wants me to think of you all the time. Yes. Shang Junlin nodded reservedly. Xinyu lifted her head from Shang Junlin's arms and smiled. Your Majesty, do you know what you look like now? Shang Junlin was in a good mood after achieving his goal. He gently stroked Xinyu's waist. What I look like is not important. You, don't forget what you promised me. What promise? Xinyu was about to ask when she suddenly remembered that Shang Junlin was talking about what had happened just now. She bumped into the man's arms again and said in a muffled voice, I know. I will think of your Majesty more every day. Shang Junlin put one hand on Xinyu's back and stroked her long hair. He felt a sense of satisfaction. They stood under the waning lights, far away from the hustle and bustle, forming a world of their own. The harmonious atmosphere between the two did not allow anyone to interrupt. After quietly hugging each other for a while, Shang Junlin let go of Xin Yu and the two continued to walk along the small path. After today's incident, the aristocratic families should be more relaxed about Feng Jiayi. After all, Shang Junlin had her weakness. Even if they opposed, they would not be as confident as before. I have given them some time to relax. It depends on what they choose. Shang Junlin's tone was emotionless when he mentioned the aristocratic families. I saw the girl from the Feng family just now. She was at ease in the crowd of students and was not restrained at all. The other people she interacted with were not as calm as her. Not wanting to spoil Shang Junlin's mood, Xin Yu casually changed the topic. Feng Jiayi's attire today was more neutral. She didn't wear a woman's extravagant and complicated dress, nor did she wear too many red hairpins in her hair. This allowed people to know that she was a woman at a glance, and she didn't look out of place with the overall atmosphere of the Qiongling banquet. We have also noticed that she has a good relationship with the top scholar and the third flower. While sitting upright, Shang Junlin had been paying attention to the movements of the people below. Compared to the others, Feng Jiayi was indeed more willing to talk to Jiang Huiqing and He Qingyu. Unlike the others, when the two of them conversed with her, they didn't act strangely because of her identity as a woman. Even if the others tried their best to restrain themselves, there would still be a trace of something wrong in their words and actions. The atmosphere of the banquet was lively. The students discussed their knowledge with each other, and the bolder ones would directly ask the officials questions. Some of the aristocratic officials were simply unable to sit still. The emperor could leave the banquet as he pleased, but they couldn't. Even if they were anxious to solve Yi Jianming's matter, they could only sit there and force a smile. They couldn't show the slightest hint of abnormality. Lord Yi knocked on the table. Have you sent someone to deliver the news to the two officials? Don't worry, Lord Yi. I have already sent someone. Because their grades were close, Feng Jiayi, He Qingyu, and Jiang Huiqing's seats were also close. Feng Jiayi was attentive and noticed that there weren't many aristocratic officials present. She asked in a low voice, "Did something happen just now?" A few officials had strange expressions. Young Master Yi also didn't attend. I remember bumping into him when I just arrived. The matter was temporarily suppressed, so Jiang Huiqing couldn't say it out loud. He said in a low voice, he did something and happened to run into His Majesty. After a few sentences, the two sides naturally changed the topic. The other two cabinet ministers received the news from the Qiongling banquet and went to their usual meeting place to discuss in detail that night. The two cabinet ministers were from the aristocratic Feng family and Duan family respectively. They had a lot of authority among the aristocratic families in the capital. After taking their seats, the two of them dismissed the servants. Lord Feng asked, "What does His Majesty mean by this?" Lord Duan said, "It's obvious that His Majesty is forcing us to make concessions. Otherwise, based on His Majesty's usual temperament, he would have dealt with them on the spot without giving us any time to react." Lord Feng said, "That's true. His Majesty is still the same as before. He won't listen to advice." Lord Duan said, "If he could listen, then he wouldn't be him. Have you forgotten what happened when he just ascended the throne? The previous emperor wanted him to leave Prince Yu in the capital to recuperate. He ignored the objections of the officials and directly sent him away. How many officials did he deal with back then?" Lord Feng said, "Prince Yu is also an incompetent person. Otherwise, why would we be in such a difficult position?" Lord Duan said, "If it were up to me, he had wanted to kill Prince Yu for a long time. This time, when Prince Yu was imprisoned, he took advantage of the fact that no one could refute and directly pinned the mastermind behind the fraud on Prince Yu. It's extremely difficult for Prince Yu to turn the tables. Lord Feng said, they contacted us and said that they want our help. Should we do it? Lord Duan said, there's no hurry. We'll have to wait until the end to see the results. Lord Feng said, then what about the imperial examinations this time? Are we really going to do as he wishes? Lord Duan said, what else can we do? He's determined to promote people from humble backgrounds to go against us. Now, he's even allowed women to enter the imperial court as officials. Sooner or later, he'll destroy his own Great Wall. The next morning, during the discussion about women entering the imperial court as officials, there were fewer objections. Other than Fang Jia's position, everyone else's positions were more or less decided. As the weather became warmer and warmer, Shen Yu spent more time outside the house. Imperial physician Gu also said that it was appropriate for him to walk outside more. Shang Junlin was very concerned about Shen Yu's matters. After hearing Imperial physician Gu say that it was good for Shen Yu to walk outside more often, he would take Shen Yu outside whenever he had time. Shang Junlin originally wanted to let Shen Yu practice martial arts to keep fit, but Shen Yu flatly refused. After being reborn, he only wanted to be as comfortable as possible. In the evening, after finishing dinner, Shang Junlin put down his work and held Shen Yu's hand to take a walk in the small garden outside Yuzhang Palace. Feng family and Duan family. Shen Yu's footsteps paused. He had an impression of these two families because in his previous life, these two families had secretly sought refuge with the King of Yu. Before the King of Yu ascended the throne, they had done a lot of things for him. The Feng family and the Duan family have actually been entrenched in Dahuan since the founding of Dahuan Empire. However, their real heyday was during the late period of the previous emperor's reign. At that time, the previous emperor favored treacherous officials and allowed the power to fall into the hands of the aristocratic families who had been eyeing them covetously. The Feng family and the Duan family benefited the most. Seeing that Shen Yu was interested in the Feng family and the Duan family, Shang Junlin explained more. When I first ascended the throne, I dealt with a lot of people. The Feng family and the Duan family were very sensible, so I couldn't do anything to them. At that time, the imperial court was too chaotic. First, the previous emperor had caused a lot of trouble. Capable officials were either forced to resign or were framed and executed. Those who were left behind were mostly in cahoots with the treacherous officials. Shang Junlin's foundation in the imperial court was not stable. He had seized the throne with military power and there were very few people who could be used. After massacring those treacherous officials who had caused chaos in the imperial court, there was a large gap in the number of officials who could be used. Shang Junlin had no choice but to temporarily use the officials from the aristocratic families who were relatively obedient. However, the consequences of doing so were endless. The aristocratic families and the imperial power would fight. If the aristocratic families were the most powerful, the imperial power would definitely be threatened. After ascending the throne, Shang Junlin attached great importance to the imperial examination and used the officials from humble families. This was also to balance the power of the imperial court. Only when the various powers kept each other in check could long-term stability be maintained. Right now, the Prime Minister is the only person in the cabinet who is not a member of the aristocratic families. The aristocratic families occupy two positions in the cabinet. Who does Your Majesty intend to use to replace one of them? Shang Junlin's intention was to ruthlessly suppress the aristocratic families. Fang Jun, the Prime Minister and official Fang are both in the cabinet. If both of them are in the cabinet, it will be much more convenient for Your Majesty to do whatever you want. Shen Yu lowered his eyes and pondered. With the book he had read in his previous life and the information he had obtained from Shen Qingran, as well as the help of Shen Yu in this life, he would definitely be able to bring out many new things that would be beneficial to the development of Dahuan. If the aristocratic families were to obstruct him, these things might become a sharp weapon for the aristocratic families to seize power. In his previous life, Shen Qingran had brought out many things that had benefited the aristocratic families. The aristocratic families had become stronger day by day and had made a mess of Dehuan. Shen Yu did not want to make a wedding dress for the aristocratic families. A Yu's proposal regarding the reform of the business system has not been announced to everyone yet. Before the time is right, we still need to wait. There's no need to rush. Every major change cannot be completed overnight. Moreover, the cement issue has only just begun. It will be more foolproof if there are no other problems. A Yu still understands me. Shang Junlin sighed. Your Majesty, when will Jiang Huiqing's appointment be announced? Shen Yu wanted to see what kind of path Jiang Huiqing would take in this life without those accidents. Soon. If there are no accidents, these two people will be able to enter Hanlin Academy. Although the official position at Hanlin Academy would not be too high, what was more important was the significance of this starting point. Entering Hanlin Academy was equivalent to taking half a step into the cabinet. Jiang Huiqing had a good attitude. Even though he had not been officially appointed because of Fang Jiayi's matter, he was still happy every day. He Qingyu had sent a letter to his family saying that he was the top scorer in the imperial examination and would not be able to return to Jiangnan for a while. Even if he were to be transferred out in the future, he would not be sent to Jiangnan as an official. After dealing with his own matters, He Qingyu came out of his room. Huiqing, didn't you say that you did not have enough paper and pen last time? A new shop opened in Beijing. Do you want to take a look? Jiang Huiqing was sorting out his and He Qingyu's books. The spring sun was good, so he took them out to dry in the sun. The place to dry the books almost occupied the entire small courtyard. These books were brought from home, and some were bought after coming to Beijing. Jiang Huiqing heard the sound and turned around. Yes. He did not have enough paper and pen. These days, He Qingyu had given him some. Jiang Huiqing was embarrassed to keep taking advantage of He Qingyu. Under the sun, the young man's jade-like body was even more dazzling. He Qingyu was dazzled. He pursed his lips and walked over. Shen Yu fell into a dream of his previous life. He had not dreamed of his previous life for a long time. He did not know if it was because he had been thinking about his previous life recently that he had such a dream. In the dream, it was a rainy day. He was lying on the bed. The quilt seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds, making him unable to breathe. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of footsteps was getting closer and closer. Shen Yu struggled to open his eyes. He saw Prince Yu, who had changed into an imperial robe, standing by the bed and staring at him with dark eyes. Shen Yu, you see, no matter how unwilling you are, we will still ascend the throne. You cannot change our destiny. No, that's not right. Shen Yu struggled to get up, but he could not move. He was so frightened that he broke out in a cold sweat. Yu, wake up, a familiar voice came through the heavy rain. Shen Yu struggled to open his eyes. He was startled by the face that suddenly enlarged in front of him. Seeing the fear in his eyes, Shang Junlin moved back a little. He reached out and stroked his sweat-soaked hair. Yu, why are you so afraid of us? Don't look at what you shouldn't look at. If you violate His Majesty's taboo, don't blame me for not reminding you. Yes, yes. The palace servants responded timidly. They served in Yuzhang Palace and experienced several bloody storms. Later, with Eunuch Meng Jr.'s exhortations, they didn't dare to have any thoughts that they shouldn't have. After giving the order, Eunuch Meng gently opened the door and led the palace servants in with his head down. There was a screen in the room, so the situation on the bed couldn't be seen. Eunuch Meng asked the servants to put down the bathtub. He was about to leave when Shang Junlin stopped him. Meng Chang, go to the Imperial Hospital and ask Imperial Physician Gu to come over. Eunuch Meng was shocked. Why did they need to ask for an Imperial Physician? No matter how confused he was, he wouldn't ask. He replied, I'll go now. No need to leave anyone to serve. Take them out. Yes. Eunuch Meng couldn't get much information from Shang Junlin's tone. He didn't dare to be careless and immediately did as he was told. After taking the servants out, he bumped into Mu Shi, who was carrying medicine. Eunuch Meng, what's the matter? Mu Shi asked when she saw Eunuch Meng in a hurry. It's Miss Mu Shi. Are you going to deliver medicine to Gui Jun? Don't go in yet. Wait for His Majesty to summon you. Eunuch Meng stopped and thought about the possible situation in the room. Did something happen? Mu Shi suddenly became nervous. Miss, don't be nervous. His Majesty just ordered hot water. I'm afraid it's not very convenient now. It's noon, why? Mu Shi suddenly realized something and her face turned red. I understand. Thank you for your reminder, Eunuch Meng. Eunuch Meng saw that she understood and hurriedly went to carry out Shang Junlin's orders. Shang Junlin carried Shen Yu to the bathtub and tested the temperature of the water with his hand. The temperature of the water is suitable. I'll put you in. Shen Yu nestled in Shang Junlin's arms and nodded very gently. Shang Junlin peeled her out of the fox fur coat and slowly put her in the water. Shen Yu leaned against the edge of the bathtub and soaked in the hot water. She gradually relaxed. There was more color on her lips and her skin turned light pink from the heat. Shang Junlin took a handkerchief and carefully wiped Shen Yu. Shen Yu's skin was very white. It was the kind of white that was lustrous and smooth. It was like the best mutton fat white jade. It was also very tender. A light touch would leave a mark. Shang Junlin had once imprinted plum blossoms on it, but now, the flowers had disappeared without a trace. His fingers brushed past it, and through a thin handkerchief, Shang Junlin could feel the gentle touch of his skin. After recovering a little, Shen Yu crossed her arms on the edge of the bathtub and rested her head on her arms. I'm afraid that I'm the only person in the world who can make Your Majesty personally bathe. The water is getting cold. Do you want to continue adding hot water or come out? Shang Junlin put the back of his hand on Shen Yu's forehead. Her body temperature was normal. I don't want to bathe. Shen Yu felt that she would faint again if she was steamed for a while. Shang Junlin carried her out of the bathtub, dried her, put on a clean inner garment, and wrapped her in the fox fur coat. Shen Yu stopped Shang Junlin from putting her on the bed. I don't want to lie on the bed anymore. Your Majesty, please help me put on an outer garment. I want to go out for a walk. Shang Junlin paused for a moment. Okay. After taking a bath and changing into a clean set of clothes, Shen Yu felt much more comfortable. Shang Junlin ordered the palace servants to remove the hot water. Mu Shi came in with the warm medicine. Shen Yu drank it in one gulp. Shang Junlin fed him the candied fruit. I seem to be fine. I don't need Imperial Physician Gu to come again. Shen Yu carefully felt her body. There were no symptoms of discomfort. Shang Junlin was still worried. Let Imperial Physician Gu take a look. Your Majesty, Imperial Physician Gu is here. Eunuch Meng's voice sounded outside the room. Since Imperial Physician Gu was here, Shen Yu did not refuse anymore. Eunuch Meng hinted at Imperial Physician Gu on the way. When he entered the room and saw Shen Yu, he knew that it was not the case. After carefully checking her pulse, he gradually frowned. Shen Yu originally thought that she just had a nightmare and was fine. But seeing Imperial Physician Gu's expression, it seemed that was not the case. Shang Junlin's heart sank. He asked directly, "Is there something wrong with your body?" "Something is wrong with your pulse." Imperial Physician Gu pondered for a moment. "Has there been any abnormalities in your body during this time?" Shen Yu thought carefully and replied, "I just had a nightmare. Nothing else." "Your pulse has some changes compared to before. I still need to study it. For the time being, there won't be any problems. I will prescribe a sedative medicine. Your Majesty still needs to rest well. If you continue to be troubled by nightmares, it will not be good for your body." Imperial Physician Gu prescribed the medicine and handed it to the palace servants. "I need to study your condition more. I will come to check your pulse every day for the next few days. Is it convenient for you?" "Do as Imperial Physician Gu says." Before Shen Yu could answer, Shang Junlin spoke first. Shen Yu wanted to say that there was no need to go through so much trouble. But when he saw the worry in Shang Junlin's eyes, he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. It was still raining outside. Shen Yu wanted to walk outside. Shang Junlin held an umbrella with one hand and held his hand with the other as they strolled in the rain. A gentle breeze blew, bringing with it a burst of coolness. In the real world, there was no dull feeling like in the dream. Even walking in the rain gave them a different feeling. The sudden spring rain caught many people off guard. After all, no one expected that it would suddenly rain when the sun was shining brightly in the morning. Jiang Huiqing looked at the rain falling outside the window. He tugged at He Qingyu's sleeve. "Brother Qingyu, our books won't get wet, right?" He decided to hang out the books because the weather was good today. Who would have thought that it would rain when they just arrived at the newly opened Study Sibao store? At that time, Jiang Huiqing wanted to turn around and go back. However, He Qingyu stopped him and said that the servants at home would take the books back. Even if he went back now, there was nothing he could do. Only then did he give up the idea. It won't happen. Even though he didn't know how many times he had asked, He Qingyu still replied with a good temper. "I know you treasure those books. I'll let someone take care of them." In fact, things like hanging out the books could have been done by the servants. However, Jiang Huiqing refused and insisted on doing it himself. He Qingyu couldn't persuade him and had to let him do it. "I'm almost done choosing. Brother Qingyu, how about you?" It had to be said that the store He Qingyu recommended was really good. The brushes, ink, paper, and inkstone were all of high quality and the prices weren't too expensive. Jiang Huiqing bought more than he expected. "Let's wait for the rain to lessen before going back." Jiang Huiqing looked at the rain outside and nodded. There was a designated resting area in the store. The two of them sat for a while and waited for the rain to lessen before leaving. They didn't bring an umbrella. They borrowed it from the owner and only had one. Fortunately, the umbrella was big enough to cover the two of them. He Qingyu held the umbrella in one hand and the things he bought in the other. Seeing that Jiang Huiqing was some distance away from him, he said, "Huiqing, stay closer to me. Otherwise, you'll get wet." Jiang Huiqing looked up and saw that the umbrella above his head was leaning towards him. He Qingyu, who was holding the umbrella, had his shoulder wet. He hurriedly leaned towards him. "Brother Qingyu, why didn't you say so earlier? Look at your shoulder. It's wet." "It's okay. You didn't get wet, did you?" He Qingyu laughed softly. "You're still laughing. Forget it. I'll lean closer to you. Don't move the umbrella over my head again." Looking at the young man who was leaning against him, He Qingyu whispered, "Okay." The conversation between the two of them gradually disappeared in the curtain of rain. After the heavy rain, the world looked brand new. Everything seemed to have been washed. Shin Yu and Shang Junlin strolled in the rain and felt that the rain was getting lighter. Shin Yu's mood, which was affected by the nightmare, gradually recovered. Thinking of the man who was silently accompanying him, Shin Yu stopped. What's wrong? Shang Junlin also stopped. Shin Yu looked at Shang Junlin. The man had similar facial features to the King of Yu in his dream, who was wearing the same imperial robe. However, the feeling he gave was completely different. In the hazy rain, Shang Junlin heard the young man's voice clearly. He said, "Your Majesty, do you want a kiss?" Chapter 86. Shang Junlin's gaze suddenly became aggressive. He didn't answer. Instead, he lowered his head and captured the young man's lips. It tasted as sweet as he remembered. The man sucked on Shin Yu's lips with a little force. His breath was heavy. He held one hand behind Shin Yu's head, not giving him any chance to regret. The kiss was long and powerful. Shin Yu didn't want to fall behind. He welcomed it and danced with it. He didn't know when his hands had tightly grasped the man's clothes. His body leaned back slightly and his head was forced to raise to withstand the man's increasingly fierce attacks. Shin Yu didn't close his eyes. He could see the man's enlarged face, and through the corner, he could see the umbrella above his head. The patterns on the umbrella seemed to be spinning. Everything in front of him became strange and variegated. The force on his lips was getting stronger and stronger. Shin Yu slowly closed his eyes and took the initiative to wrap his arms around the man's strong waist. Under the hazy drizzle, a green umbrella covered the beautiful scenery. Eunuch Meng and Mu Shi were far behind them. They could only see the two people closely together and the umbrella firmly covering them. The kiss lasted for an unknown period of time. Shin Yu was slowly released. The man didn't withdraw. His breath was close to Shin Yu's lips. Shin Yu woke up from the strange and variegated illusion. He didn't push Shang Junlin away. Their breaths were intertwined. An umbrella separated them from the outside world. At this moment, he didn't have to think about anything. He didn't care about anything. There was only him and Shang Junlin left in the world. He could let himself be temporarily immersed in this small world. The man's breath drifted on Shin Yu's face. As the man's kisses fell little by little with a sense of comfort, Shin Yu's heart gradually calmed down. The continuous rain couldn't extinguish the affection under the umbrella. In the end, Shang Junlin was worried that Shin Yu would catch a cold and took the initiative to go back to the room. Shin Yu had stayed outside for long enough. He didn't object. The rain stopped and the sun hung high in the sky again. Shin Yu raised his hand to cover his eyes. This weather is really interesting. He remembered that before he took a nap, the sun was also high in the sky. After the rain, the sun had returned, as if the sun had also rested for a while in the afternoon. Shang Junlin closed the umbrella and handed it to Eunuch Meng behind him. He reached out to touch Shin Yu's clothes and felt relieved when he saw that they were not wet. "Your Majesty is wet." Although the black clothes were not obvious, Shin Yu could still see that the man's shoulder was wet. "Your Majesty, please change your clothes first." Eunuch Meng hurriedly brought some clean clothes over. Shang Junlin saw the concern in Shin Yu's eyes. He swallowed the words of rejection that were on the tip of his tongue and went to the side to change his clothes. Shang Junlin had changed his clothes and came out. He hugged Shin Yu and asked with a smile, "You, were you concerned about us just now? It's not good if your Majesty catches a cold because of me." Shin Yu leaned back and felt the constant heat from the man's body. She narrowed her eyes. The two talked for a while. Eunuch Meng walked in and said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, official Feng and official Duan request to see you. The battle between the aristocratic families and the imperial power should come to an end." Your Majesty, please go ahead. I'll read a book by myself. Shen Yu had recovered and was not as dependent on Shang Junlin as a young bird that was left alone. Shang Junlin saw that he was not reluctant and said, I'll go for a while. I'll come back to accompany you when I'm done. The sky had completely cleared up. The heavy rain just now was like a dream. Thinking of the young man who took the initiative to be enthusiastic in the rain and fog, Shang Junlin was in a good mood and raised the corners of his lips. When they arrived at the imperial study, Shang Junlin returned to his usual unapproachable appearance. Eunuch Meng saw this change and cried out in his heart that there was only one noble lord who could soften his majesty's heart. Official Feng and Official Duan knew that since they took the initiative to look for Shang Junlin, it meant that the aristocratic families were willing to lower their heads. They had lost this confrontation. Why did you come to see me? Shang Junlin sat on the high seat and looked down at the two old cabinet ministers. The two knelt down and saluted. After they got up, they said, We came for the matter of the Qianglin banquet. You know about it too. Shang Junlin supported his forehead with one hand. Tell me, how do you plan to deal with it? After Yi Jianming and the others were taken away, they were locked up in solitary confinement and no one was allowed to visit them. Shang Junlin also did not give orders on how to deal with them. The aristocratic families could not sit still and had to ask the two cabinet ministers to come forward. Official Feng and Official Duan also knew that this matter could be big or small. It all depended on Shang Junlin's decision. They could not understand Shang Junlin's thoughts and did not know where to start. Your Majesty, what those juniors did was indeed inappropriate. We also investigated and found that they did not do anything to anyone. It was just that there was some conflict between the two parties. What they were most thankful for now was that these people had not really done anything. No matter what they said or what plan they had, as long as it was not implemented, there was still room to turn things around. Shang Junlin did not interrupt the two of them and let them finish speaking. He said, So, according to you, I am making a mountain out of a molehill. This subject does not dare. This subject knows that these juniors' actions were inappropriate. However, when we meet in the imperial court in the future, the misunderstanding must be resolved. Your Majesty, why not give them a chance to resolve the misunderstanding face to face? If everyone is like this, how can the imperial court establish its prestige? I believe that the two of you do not want to see the day when you are disrespected, right? The more Shang Junlin remained silent, the heavier the stone in Official Feng and Official Duan's hearts became. Although they had guessed before coming, they still wanted to struggle until the last moment. The conversation lasted for a full 4 hours. When Official Feng and Official Duan came out of the imperial study, the sky was already dark. The two of them looked at each other and saw the bitterness in each other's eyes. In the end, Shang Junlin was out of their control and became an emperor that they could not easily shake. The two of them did not return to the residence directly. Instead, they went to the place where they usually gathered. Some words could only be said in private. In the end, we underestimated him. From the beginning, we should have known that some people are destined to be uncontrollable. Official Feng sighed deeply. Official Duan frowned. But at that time, other than this one, we had no other choice. The King of Yu's foundation was too shallow and was no match for him at all. Not to mention the other princes, those who had the strength to fight were all gone. The remaining princes were even worse than the King of Yu. Official Feng, what should we do now? Official Duan, what else can we do? The words have already been said, so we can only follow his wishes. However, there is no need to worry. We are not the only ones who are not willing to let a woman enter the imperial court as an official. Let's wait and see. There are so many people in the world, there will only be more and more who will oppose it. How could Shen Yu and Shang Junlin not think about the problem that they were thinking about? A woman entering the imperial court as an official was a shocking matter for the Great Yuan dynasty. Only a few people would accept it. However, some things could not be given up just because there were not many people who would accept it. The process of starting from scratch was difficult. Since ancient times, there was no exception. From the moment they made a decision, they were prepared to face all kinds of doubts. After Jiang Huiqing and He Qingyu returned to the residence, just as He Qingyu had said, the servants were nimble and his treasured books were not drenched. After tidying up the books, Jiang Huiqing took out the rice paper, brush, and ink that he had bought today. Thinking of what he had heard in the shop and this encounter, he picked up the brush. By the time he reacted, he had already written a few pages of paper. Jiang Huiqing stared at the words on the paper and held his forehead. Since he had already written it, he might as well send it over. Xinyu leaned on the soft couch and was lost in thought. He thought of something and called Mu Shi. Last time, you said that. Xinyu agreed. What has she been doing recently? She has recently developed a lot of new things that the imperial concubine likes very much. She even sent some to the palace. Does young master want to take a look? Bring it over and let me see. Mu Shi went out and gave an order. Not long after, the palace servants came in with a few things. Miss Xinyu said that this is a soap used to clean your hands. Mu Shi picked up a square object from a wooden box and introduced it to Xinyu. Xinyu took it over. There was a faint fragrance on it and it smelled very good. Mu Shi introduced some other items, all of which were daily necessities that were convenient for living. Let's go to the imperial concubine's palace to take a look. Xinyu got up. Shang Junlin was busy with official business. He had nothing to do in Yuzhang Palace, so he might as well walk around. The palace where the imperial concubine lived was some distance away from Yuzhang Palace. Unlike the bustling Yuzhang Palace, this palace reflected the word simple and elegant from inside to outside. The imperial concubine, who had received the news, came out with the palace servants to welcome them. After greeting them, the imperial concubine led them into the main hall. I came here on a whim. Sorry to disturb you, imperial concubine. Xinyu looked at the woman with simple and elegant makeup. The imperial concubine was in her 40s and had taken good care of herself. There were not many traces of age on her face. Perhaps it was because of her temperament that she gave off a very peaceful feeling. It was such a gentle and harmless woman who had lived peacefully in the previous emperor's harem until today. Not at all, not at all. Are you here for Xinyu? The imperial concubine called Xinyu over. Yes, I saw the things sent to Yuzhang Palace and felt that they were very novel, so I came to take a look. Xinyu did not hide his true intentions. Are you talking about the things Xinyu made? Xinyu likes to make novel things since she came to my palace. It's her good fortune to be valued by you and His Majesty. The imperial concubine's tone was full of protectiveness for Xinyu. Don't worry, imperial concubine. She made those things, so she will get what she deserves. Xinyu had always been fair in his rewards and punishments. He would not and disdain to take other people's credit. Xinyu took out the things she had prepared in advance and handed them to Xinyu. These things were sorted out according to what she knew in her previous life. She was not sure what was useful and what was not, so she simply wrote them down and handed them to Xinyu to decide. Xinyu did not stay for long. He took the things and said a few words to the imperial concubine before leaving. After returning to Yuzhang Palace, Xinyu looked through the things Xinyu had sorted out. They were different from what he remembered in his previous life. Xinyu had written things that were convenient for daily life, especially for women. As for how to use these things, he had to discuss with Shang Junlin. Just as he was thinking, he saw Shang Junlin walk in. What is you looking at? Shang Junlin walked to Xinyu and asked. Looking at the things Xinyu sorted out. Xinyu leaned over and made room for Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin leaned over and hugged Xinyu from behind. He looked at the contents of the paper beside Xinyu's hand and said, "Is this the reason why you treats Xinyu differently? Doesn't your majesty think that these things are very useful?" Xinyu asked. Shang Junlin lifted a strand of Xinyu's hair and said, "They are very useful. But how did you know that Xinyu could give these things?"